Hello, and welcome to UAN Introduction Training for Accounting. On the UAN Link website, we have recorded trainings designed for newly elected and newly appointed fiscal officers. This video is in the introduction phase of your training. You should watch the orientation and the prerequisite accounting videos before beginning this video. Once you have completed the introduction training, the proficiency videos will help you build your knowledge and skills in the use of the UAN software. I'll show you the website and location of these videos in just a moment. If you're wondering where to find the books referred to in the prerequisite training videos, they are not being released. It was originally planned that the books and videos would be released together, but it was later determined that only the videos would be released. UAN support really cannot cross that line of being just software support. We're permitted to explain some basics, but beyond the basics, we have to refer you to other sources. This UAN training video qualifies for the Fiscal Integrity Act training hours. Remember to self-report the training videos you complete at the Fiscal Integrity Act self-reporting portal. UAN support cannot answer questions or assist with the use of the self-reporting portal. Your questions should be directed to Janice D'Alessandro or Aaron O'Donnell at the Auditor of State's office by telephoning or emailing. You see their contact information on the screen. They can help you with your training reporting and questions. UAN support can answer your UAN software questions, and we can be contacted by telephone at 1-800-833-8261. When you call, the next available representative will answer your question. A telephone call is always your fastest response. If you're not available during our business hours, you can email your question to the support line. Always identify your entity name and county in the email and provide sufficient details so we can send you an email response. Please do not send an email that says, "Call me, I have a question." If you're available by telephone, please call so the next available representative can assist you. UAN is a division of the Auditor of State's office. We handle support of the UAN software. Questions about Fiscal Integrity Act, fund accounting proper procedures, or audit must be handled by other divisions of the Auditor of State's office. You can use the UAN Introduction Training New Fiscal Officer Accounting Module Training booklet with this video. I will refer to the page numbers as we move forward. In the Accounting Module Training booklet, Chapter 1, Page 1 begins with the self-help resources. UAN software manuals contain detailed information on each function, including an overview, how-to, step-by-step instructions, and frequently asked questions. There are several ways to access the UAN manuals. Clicking on the Need Help button on the main menu will open screen-specific helpful information in the manual, including step-by-step instructions for adding transactions in the How-to section of each subject. The FAQs menu, Frequently Asked Question, is available in the lower left-hand corner of the UAN screen. It will list quick links to the sections in the manual relevant to the last area in view. For example, if the Receipts area is open, the FAQ section will display links to instructions on an overview of receipts, how to add a receipt, how to post a receipt, frequently asked questions related to receipts, as well as a screencast tutorial. The manual can also be viewed in an Adobe PDF file. The steps to access: from your desktop, you choose UAN Tools, Version Documentation, and Manuals. And you'll see the Accounting and General Manual and the Payroll Manual. The manual can also be accessed from our website, UAN Link, at ohioauditor.gov. Click on Training and Accounting, and on the right side you see UAN Accounting Manual. When you click on that link, it takes you to the UAN Accounting and General Manual, and when you click on that, it opens to PDF. This can be accessed from any computer with the internet. The screencast tutorials are audio-visual tutorials that can be played from within the UAN software. They do not require internet access. Examples of screencasts available include purchase orders, payments, receipts, and the utilities associated with these transactions. All screencasts will be accessible within the UAN software under the FAQs menu when the area related to the screencast is in view. The FAQs menu is available in the lower left-hand corner of the UAN screen. When you first log into UAN, the first screencast tutorial you see is Welcome to the UAN Screencast Tutorial. This short video will familiarize you with the modules in the UAN software, accounting, payroll, budget, inventory, and general, as well as the menu items associated with these modules, transactions, utilities, reports and statements, and maintenance. Underneath each of these menu items are the functions. Under accounting and transactions, the functions listed are associated with accounting transactions. Each of these functions will open a form. If I click on the Receipts function, it will open the Receipts form. In this list, you see 2 receipts that I have begun but have not posted. They are sitting in the batch waiting for me to finalize these items and post. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen are the action buttons. I can take action on the items listed in the batch. When I want to add a new item, I choose the Add button. Notice in the bottom left corner, the frequently asked questions have followed me in the software. I now see a receipt screencast tutorial. I can click on the receipt screencast tutorial to open a short video to refresh my memory.
Welcome to the Auditor of State Uniform Accounting Networks.
If I like printed step-by-step instructions instead of a screencast tutorial, I would click on the overview to read about receipts, how to add a receipt to see step-by-step instructions to add, and how to print a receipt to see step-by-step instructions to post and print a receipt. In addition, the FAQs listed under FAQs would be the frequently asked questions about receipts. These items will follow you in the software and provide the help you need when we aren't available. Remember, UAN support is a phone call away during regular business hours. The next section on page 2 is about our training software. Once you have access to the UAN software, you will have access to the training application. Our training module allows you to practice UAN in a software environment using a copy of your most recent entity data without affecting any of the data in your UAN application. It is a safe place to try things that you're not sure of. Let me show you how to access the UAN training software. You must exit the live software. From the desktop, click UAN Tools, UAN Training, and then you may want to go ahead and close this folder. Sometimes this synchronization window opens behind that folder and you can't see it. The software is asking you a question. Do you want to synchronize the training software with your current live UAN data? Usually the answer is yes. It means, do you want an up-to-date copy of your live data? So if you're trying to see how something works, you usually want to say, yes, I want my most recent copy. And when you click yes, the software will synchronize. Once the data has synchronized, you will log in with your usual UAN password. Notice in the upper right corner, the software is reminding you that you are in training mode. Everything you post or print in this mode will have a training watermark on the page so that you're not going to confuse what you printed in training with what you do in the live software. You can try out a procedure to see if it works, check the reports, make sure that's what you wanted to happen, and then exit out of the training module, go back in the live software, and begin the process posting live. The training module is a valuable learning tool and is often used by experienced fiscal officers to try something new. The UAN Link website contains software manuals, training videos, training course booklets, communications, and much more. A shortcut to the website is built into the UAN software. If you have internet on your UAN computer, you simply click on the seal in the upper left corner of your screen and it will launch the UAN Link website. The UAN online training recordings are located under Training. You would select the subject matter of the training, such as our transition courses, and the page will show you all of the transition training. Transition training is geared toward newly elected or newly appointed fiscal officers. Phase 1 is the orientation training. You can see that there are 3 videos: UAN Service for New Fiscal Officers, UAN Orientation, and UAN Transition. Phase 2 is the UAN Prerequisite Training videos. They're designed to give you the background of fund accounting and payroll so that your software training will be more meaningful. Phase 3 is the UAN Introduction Training. These sessions are designed to introduce you to the UAN software, accounting, and payroll modules. Phase 4, UAN Proficiency Training, will help build your knowledge and skill of the UAN software. Other training videos are available under the different modules you see listed. On our homepage, in the middle right of the screen, you can see the latest UAN communications to our clients. If you can't find the email we just sent, but you know you received it, you can always find it on our UAN website. Notice in the bottom section of our screen, you can click on UAN support hours to find the holidays we will not be working each year. This is a 2016 holiday schedule. Note that we will not be working these days. We often receive frustrated voice messages and multiple emails on holidays where we are not scheduled to work. Please keep a copy of this handy so that you know when we are not going to be available. The Auditor of States website has helpful information for a new fiscal officer as well. From our website, you can simply click the seal at the upper left corner and it will take you to the Auditor of States website. Items that may be of use to you are the class information from the LGOC conference. Even if you weren't able to attend, the information from each class will be available for you to read. We're going to go first to our resources page. There are publications that will be useful. Under Publications and Manuals, scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can see the Village Officer's Handbook will be useful for the fiscal officer, council members, and mayors, and the Township Handbook, useful for township fiscal officers and trustees. In addition, the Ohio Compliance Supplement Manuals will be useful, and the Yellow Book Open Government Resource Manual. Over to the left, you see the technical bulletins and best practices that may be helpful to you. This completes Chapter 1. Okay, Chapter 2, First Day on the Job. Getting logged into the UAN is the first step. So if you are a newly elected fiscal officer and you already provided your documentation, you sent that to us ahead of time, then we should be contacting you on April 1st. There is nothing wrong with you calling us when you are at the computer and ready, and we'll get your password reset as we're on the telephone. For those of you who are newly elected and have not provided your documentation, or for those who are appointed mid-year to replace a fiscal officer who has left, you need to provide this documentation. We need a letter on your entity letterhead. The letter needs to be signed by the trustees if you're a township or the mayor if you are in a village. The letter needs to provide the name and contact information of the new fiscal officer. And by contact information, I mean telephone, email, mailing, and shipping address. We need to remove what belonged to the previous fiscal officer and make sure our contact information is accurate with the new fiscal officer. We also need the letter to request UAN support to contact and assist the new fiscal officer with access to all the UAN software. The signed letter can be faxed to UAN at 1-877-727-0088, or you can email a scanned copy of the signed letter. It has to be signed to UAN_support@ohioauditor.gov. And upon receipt of that faxed or emailed signed letter, we will contact you and walk you through the password resets and adding a username to the UAN software. Now remember, if the previous fiscal officer has given you their username and password, it is only for the purpose of you logging in one time and then setting yourself up in the software. I'm going to show you how you're going to set yourself up in the software once you have gained access. In the software, you will go to General, Maintenance, Users. And notice the only user listed here is Brutus, the previous fiscal officer. I was appointed to replace Brutus. So when I have access to the software, I need to add myself. I'm not going to continue using Brutus's username. Your username can be anything you like, but remember that you have to type it every time you log into the software. My example will be just a first name. And my role as fiscal officer is always going to be administrator. You may have other users to the software that don't have administrator access. Those user roles can be defined by the fiscal officer. I'm going to click Save, and it's going to inform me that my username is Trina, just like I typed in, and my first password I will use is going to be lowercase UAN. I click OK to that message, close the form, and I can see myself listed as administrator. You cannot delete or deactivate Brutus at this point because you were logged in as the previous fiscal officer. So we will log out of the software, double click on the UAN icon to log back in, and now I'm going to log in under my new username with the password lowercase UAN for the first time. The software is going to show me that the password has expired. It was only temporary to get me to this point, and now is the time I have to set my real password. It must be 8 characters long and have at least 2 types of the 4 listed. So letters, numbers, or special characters can be used, but 1 character has to be different. So I'm going to type in lowercase UAN as the current password that is expired, and then I'm going to type a new password that I'm going to continue using for the next 90 days, the same in both the new password and the verified password boxes. I click Save, and I am logged into the software as myself. Now I'm going to go to General, Maintenance, and Users, right where I was before, and I'm going to deactivate Brutus. I'm not going to be able to delete him because he has posted in the software this year. So I'm going to deactivate. Brutus can no longer access the software once he's deactivated. I'm now the only user. You may see other users listed. If they are prior fiscal officers that have been gone a long time, you can deactivate them as well. And some of you will see multiple users listed here with different roles. It depends on what's been set up at your entity. Let's turn over to page 6 in the exercise booklet. Updating UAN with the new fiscal officer information. It's going to be very important that you replace the old fiscal officer in the software. So not just as a user, but where their name shows up in the entity setup. So we are still in general maintenance, and I want you to select entity setup as our function. The entity setup form opens, and notice the previous fiscal officer's name is listed. I need to type my name. If the previous fiscal officer used their home address as the entity contact information, you need to update that. If this information reflects the township or the village's building, then go ahead and leave this as it is. On this page, the Ohio and federal tax identification numbers are listed. You should verify that these are accurate, and if so, click Save. While we're in the entity setup, I need you to verify whether the previous fiscal officer has their signature automatically printing on warrants. Warrants is just another name for checks. So we're going to click on the Payments tab. If it says Use Standard Layout, the signature is not going to be there and you have nothing further to check. If it is set on Use Custom Layout, you may need to make some changes. So I would like you to click on the Design Warrant, and when it opens, What you're looking for is signatures in this block. If you see signatures, and if the name of the previous fiscal officer is one of those signatures, you need to click on that box and press your delete key, removing the signature from the setup. Click Save. The software will show you that the form layout has been saved, and we will click OK and Close. You do not want your first warrants to print with that information. You can then figure out how to get the automatic signatures back in with your signature. Make sure that you have the legislation to back up using automatic signatures. On the original page of the entity setup, you're going to click Save again and then Close. So if you don't see signatures, go ahead and leave it as it is. If you see the signatures and they contain the previous fiscal officer, you'll need to get rid of that signature. Two important items on the bottom of page 7, locate and review the last month's meeting minutes. You may want to read further back than that so you can find out what's been going on at your entity and what is expected in the coming months. It's also important that you should review your last audit. There should be an internal copy at the entity that contains the complete audit and the management letter. The management letter will not be found on the Auditor of State's website. Reviewing your last audit gives you an idea of what has been done correctly and what has been done incorrectly. You do not want to repeat the same mistakes of the previous fiscal officer. Reading the audit will help you to avoid that mistake. On page 8 of the training manual, we see Reports Key Software Concepts. I want to take you to Accounting, Reports and Statements, and we'll take a look at appropriation reports as our example. Each report form contains a drop-down list of the different types of reports for the form. This is called our selection list. You can select any of the reports. This is the year drop-down menu. The year drop-down controls the processing year of the reports. This is how you access the prior year data that has been closed in the UAN software. If I click the drop-down list, I can see that the fake Buckeye Township in Franklin County has posted in UAN since 2013, and I can access those reports by simply clicking the year. The date area in some reports is available. Let me show you that. The appropriation ledger will let me choose month. It will always default to the latest posted month, or I can choose year for the entire year, or I can select a period. Let me change to a different report so we can see the Filters tab. The Filters tab controls the limit of the information available in the selection list. For example, in this report, it tells me any balance or any negative balance. Negative balances would be a very bad thing. The Sorting tab would give me the options to sort. Different reports would have different options available. The Departments tab, notice that it's grayed out. It's only available when departmentalization is enabled, and we're only going to see that in the very large entities. The Options tab will give options. Sometimes it allows you to include batch items or start each fund on a new page. Most reports can be generated in 3 media formats. Paper, by printing. You would simply select the items in the list and click Print. Display will simply display the report on your screen. And if you wish to print it after you looked at it, there's a tiny print icon here. You can also save it to PDF. This is useful when you email reports to your board members before the meeting. Save as PDF. The software will ask you to give it a name, and it will save it to the UAN e-files folder. Some report groups have the additional option to create an Excel file. Notice there is an export button that is grayed out when I choose appropriation status. All reports that have the capability to be exported to an Excel file will be listed on the selection list as an export. Notice when I choose Appropriation Export, I can no longer print, display, or save as PDF. I would select the items and click Export. The software will default a name, I could change that if I like, and we'll save it to the UAN e-files folder. So export reports are always on the selection list. When you want to select print, display, save PDF, or export, you must mark items in the list. The header checkbox at the top of the list means select everything in the list. You don't have to select everything in the list. You can select only one account or just the accounts that you want, and then click Print, Display, Save PDF, or if you're on the Export report, click Export. When you're the new fiscal officer, it will be important for you to understand the status of your entity. So on page 9, we start with bank cash balances. You need to know what is in the software as different bank accounts. So let's take a look at different reports. We're going to go to Accounting and Reports and Statements, Checking Account Reports. If your entity has one checking account, you will simply see the primary listed here. The primary checking account is where all receipts and payments post to and from. The sample entity has a secondary checking account. If you have other checking accounts, they should be listed here. We recommend printing the checking account detail report. Notice that there are other reports on the drop-down list. Select the reports and click Print. I'll click Display for class purposes. Notice that the software is simply showing us, let me make that big enough for you to see, the checking account detail for the primary checking account. And remember, the current balance is not going to match your bank statement balance because, well, some checks have not cleared. The secondary checking is listed, and again, the statement balance probably will not match this if there's outstanding items. Make sure that you understand what is in the software and what is at the bank. In addition to the checking accounts, you'll have to look at the investments. So I'm going to go to Investment Reports, and we recommend the investment detail. So from the drop-down list and the selection list, I'm going to choose Investment Detail. And I'm going to select all of the open items, and for class purposes I'll display. At home you can print. And this gives us the detail of the investments. When it was purchased, when it may mature. If it is a non-pooled investment, you'll see one fund listed. If it's a pooled investment, there will be no fund listed. You want to verify that the investments in UAN are the same as the investments you have at the bank. Now let's take a look at our fund cash balances. Remember, the total of all your cash is equal to the total of all your funds. So we'll close the investment report and go to fund reports. The fund report form has many fund reports listed on the selection list. We do want the fund status. It's a very simple one-page report. I'm going to display for class purposes. You'll want to print this. It's going to list each of our funds and their current fund balance. If you have non-pooled investments, and you may not, they would be listed in the investments non-pooled column, and the far right column is the checking and pooled investments total. At the bottom of the list, you'll see a total of the pooled investments, total of the secondary checking accounts, and the available primary checking balance. In the book on page 11, we recommend the Fund Activity Report if you want to see what is posted in and out of each fund. So from the drop-down list, I choose Fund Activity. It's going to default to the last month an item was posted to the funds listed. I can mark it for the year, select all or just one fund at a time, and you can display or print. And it will show you the beginning cash balance and each item, payments or receipts, that posted to this fund. Let's close this form. At the beginning of page 12, the question is, what are revenue accounts and which ones do we use? Well, if we go down to revenue reports, I can see revenue status and revenue chart of accounts is our recommended report. I would suggest that you print this report and create a cheat sheet. The descriptions are sometimes easy to tell what gets posted to these accounts, but if you're in any doubt, You would look at the revenue ledgers to see what kind of items are posted to the account, and then make yourself a cheat sheet. Write out to the right of these what gets posted to these accounts. Moving forward, what are appropriation accounts and which ones do we use? I'm going to close the revenue reports form and choose appropriation reports. From the drop-down list, I choose appropriation chart of accounts. On the filters tab, I can see it's showing me only the active accounts. None of the inactive will appear on this list. I can select all and print this report. And again, you may want to create a cheat sheet so that you can become familiar with these accounts. The 1,110 means general fund administrative for a township. 110 for a village would mean security of persons and property. You may want to make yourself a little cheat sheet that says 1,110 equals what department. And then down here, draw a line between 1,110 and 120, and then write down what 120 means so that each of your funds and programs can be easily identified. Notice on this list, the direct charges, yes or no, indicates whether these account codes can be charged directly. Yes, you'll see that in the salary accounts and other payroll-related items, but the items that require purchase orders, an encumbrance of the budget, will say N for no. This is not a direct account. You will have to have a purchase order or a blanket certificate in place to spend from these accounts. One of the next things you'll need to know is when was the last time the system was reconciled. For a new fiscal officer, you may be coming in after someone who did not do a good job, and you'll need to evaluate that from the very beginning. So let's close the appropriation accounts report and we'll go to bank reconciliation reports. In the list, you will see all of the posted bank reconciliations. In our training environment today, the date for this section of the session is April 1st. Notice that on April 1st, the posted bank reconciliations accurately are January and February. I would be getting the bank statements for March any day now. So I can see that the previous fiscal officer, Brutus Buckeye, did the bank reconciliations for January and February, but that does not tell me whether or not he truly reconciled. So we have to see if he truly reconciled to know whether I'm going to have problems moving forward. We're going to mark the last bank reconciliation and I'll click display. On this very first page, there are two lines labeled Other Adjusting Factors. In the upper section under UAN and in the lower section under the bank balances. Normally, there would be a list of the adjustment notes for items plugged into these amounts. It means they truly did not reconcile and they have plugged in a number, and that could indicate a problem for you. Not always, but sometimes. On this bank reconciliation, we see no red flags. There are no adjustments, no other adjusting factors for the UAN software, or no other adjusting factors for the bank balance. From the first look, it indicates that Brutus was truly reconciled. Notice where it says there are no outstanding adjustments. If it says there are outstanding adjustments listed, that means that there is something that Brutus posted in the software but did not clear as he should have on the February bank reconciliation. Normally, when an adjustment is required, it should have been cleared on the first bank reconciliation it was available. So that gives you an idea of what your cash balances are, what bank accounts you have, what funds you have, your revenue codes, your appropriation codes, and the last time your system was reconciled. Let's move on to Chapter 3, Important Computer Security Reminders. We'll start with backing up the UAN system. To do a UAN backup, you go to General, Maintenance, and Backups. Notice that next to Backups are two small arrows, and this means that there's more. When I click on Backups, it gives me choices. I have a UAN backup, a documents backup, and a prior software backup. We'll start with the UAN backup. When I click on this function, the form opens and it automatically defaults a name with a date and timestamp of the backup. We recommend you use this date and timestamp as the name of the backup. Notice that you have three choices: CD or DVD, flash drive or a USB drive, or a network drive or other. The network drives are going to be less common. Many people are using flash drives these days because they hold so much more data. What you want to remember is you must back up at least once every 30 days, and we highly recommend you don't wait that long between backups. It means that you haven't preserved any of the work for the entire month. We highly recommend you back up every day, and if not every day, at least after each day that you do a substantial amount of work. In the event of a computer crash or theft of your computer, fire, flood, all these things have happened to UAN clients, the backup will give us a restore point so you don't have to repost all of the work that was lost. It is very important for you to back up. You should keep a log of your backup so you know which media you backed up to. You should be rotating your backups. Please do not stick a flash drive in your USB hub and then just continue backing up on that same flash drive. If your computer is stolen, they're taking your backups with it. So that is not a wise decision to make. In addition, if that flash drive fails, your only backups are now on a flash drive that can't be accessed. So we highly recommend rotating 5 to 10 pieces of media, whether it's CDs or flash drives, number them and rotate them, and do backups regularly. Performing a backup is very simple. You select your media type. If you're plugging your flash drive into the same USB hub, then you wouldn't need to browse. If you've changed the hub or you don't remember what hub you used, make sure you browse first and select the correct folder. Once you're ready, click Start, and I'll simply do that while I'm talking. This backup is only going to back up the UAN software data. It doesn't back up anything else on your computer. That's why there are two other backups listed. The Documents backup is going to back up everything in your My Documents folder. Let me show you what I mean by that. If you click on your Start button and click Documents, this is exactly what's going to be backed up. Nothing outside of that folder would be backed up. So if you have documents on your desktop, they will not be backed up, and we've had clients lose these things. Please remember to put your documents in your Documents folder and put a shortcut to them on your desktop rather than placing the actual documents on your desktop. The prior software backup backs up the old UAN software. Once the backup is completed successfully, you simply close the form. Remove the flash drive by clicking on the icon and safely removing your flash drive. Remember to take your backups off-site so that if the building burns or the computer is stolen, they don't steal your flash drives with it. We've had a lot of people leave those backups laying right next to the computer, and it's not a good plan. Always keep your latest backup off-site. That takes us to page 17, keeping your antivirus software up to date. So if you're using a high-speed internet connection that is always on, the program will automatically download the latest antivirus updates. To manually update the software, you would click on the semantic endpoint protection icon. Notice in the bottom right corner next to the date and time, it may be along here somewhere for your computer. If you hover over that, see, it will show you that it's the semantic endpoint protection, and mine is showing that the virus and spyware protection are out of date. To update your antivirus software, right-click on that icon and choose Open Semantic Endpoint Protection. We want to allow the following program to make that, and notice that it says out of date. So if we go to Live Update and update the system, very simple to keep that up to date. If your computer is not always attached to the internet, you need to do this when you do connect to the internet. Very important to keep this up to date. That completes Chapter 3. We'll move on to Chapter 4, the First Month Survival Guide. Newly elected fiscal officers taking office April 1st will need to do the March bank reconciliations. Please understand that the previous fiscal officer did not have the bank statements before March 31st. They generally end on the last day of the month. So they couldn't have done the March reconciliation, and that will be one of the first things you have to do. A bank reconciliation is a process of verifying the UAN account balances against the actual bank account balances on a specified date, usually the end of the month. A bank reconciliation in the UAN software reconciles the overall UAN system balance with the overall bank balance. Bank accounts do not have to be reconciled individually, but their expected balances are calculated and displayed for comparison purposes. A bank reconciliation should be posted at the end of each month after the bank statements have been received. And keep in mind that some of your investments do not send a statement at the end of each month. Some of your certificates of deposits or other investments may post interest mid-month. Go ahead and post that interest as it arrives. Don't wait till the end of the month. The steps to access the UAN bank reconciliation are accounting, transactions, and bank reconciliation. On the bank reconciliation form, if there is a bank reconciliation for March started, it would be listed in the batch. If there's nothing listed, you would click the Add button. The software will remind you that instructions are provided at the top of each tab on the bank reconciliation form, and you should review all tabs and instructions carefully. The as of date is generally the last day of the month. From our calendar drop-down list, we will choose March 31st and click OK. And the bank reconciliation form opens. Notice in the bottom left-hand corner under FAQs, you see the Simple Bank Reconciliation screencast tutorial. For those of you that only have a primary checking account, the Simple Bank Reconciliation would be easiest for you. For those that have multiple checking accounts and investments, the Complicated Bank Rec screencast tutorial could be of assistance to you in finding errors. Notice there is also a Bank Rec worksheet that is designed to help you find the errors. There's also step-by-step instructions how to add and post a bank reconciliation and the frequently asked questions about bank reconciliations. So don't forget you have the FAQs in the bottom left corner of your screen following you to offer assistance. On the Bank Statements tab, notice that we have several tabs down the left side. This is where we enter the actual statement balances. In your book on pages 23 through 27, we've provided sample bank statements. Now we realize they don't have the bank name on them. They're just samples. Your bank statements are going to come from your banks, and they're going to be very individual to your entity. We provided these samples so that you understand that a bank statement is going to show you different items. So the first thing that we would have to do is take our statement ending balance. So from page 23, the ending balance of our checking account statement is 174,474.92, and I enter that in the primary checking box. As I move through my statements, I'm going to find my secondary checking on page 27, $18,000. I find the investment with the account number 1234015 on the top of page 26 and enter the balance there. My next statement is account number 1511931 on the bottom of page 25. $25,000 is its balance. Account number 357146, the statement is at the bottom of page 26, and the balance is $13,000. The money market account statement is at the top of page 27, and my ending balance is $407,354.58. And last, my Star Ohio account statement balance is on page 25, $575,000.00. Keep in mind that some of you have investments that will not provide a statement every month. You would use the last statement balance to complete this box because the balance hasn't changed since the last statement. Once you enter all of your statement balances, you've begun the process. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And what we need to understand is some of the items on the bank statements have not been posted, such as interest, because we don't know the interest until the statements are received. Let's turn back to page 23 and look at our checking account statement example. In the center, under deposit/credit activity, we see interest receipts posted for several accounts. So what you need to understand is your primary checking may receive interest from your investments as a direct deposit. You won't know that until you receive the statements. I can see that there is interest on account number 357146, Star Ohio, account number 1511931, and my checking account interest that all needs to be posted. The bank statement provides the information. I would have to post the interest receipts and any other items that have not already been posted in UAN that appear on the bank statement. So once I save, I can close, and I would go do those postings. So let me walk you through that. Accounting, transactions, and receipts. I've already started the interest receipts so that you don't have to watch me post all of them. Primary checking and the Star Ohio. I have 2 CDs on my primary checking account that will need to be posted as well. So this is my batch list, and I'm going to add additional items. I'm going to click Add, choose the interest receipt type. We'll cover this further as we move forward in the class. Our interest for 357146, I would have to choose the account from the drop-down list. Notice that I'm going to have to verify that this setting is correct. The previous fiscal officer may not have set up this investment to default to the correct setting. So this is posting to the primary checking account. I can tell that this is a non-pooled investment because only one account code appears. I'm going to enter the amount, $12.79. My dates are going to be important. The receipt, deposit, and post date in this case is going to be backdated to the date this item hit my bank statement, and that would be 3/31. So I'll choose 3/31 from the drop-down list for each of these dates. And I tell the software to remember date until form closes and click Save. My next receipt that needs to be posted is for investment 1511931. So I click the drop-down list and I find that investment. Notice that this investment defaults with several account codes. This would be all of the funds with a pooled balance. If you watch the prerequisite accounting videos, then you understand that pooled investments are distributed among all the funds with a pooled balance. The software will automatically distribute the interest if I check this box and enter the interest amount, $14.30. Notice that the software has automatically distributed all of the interest according to law. Under the funds, notice that the general fund is going to receive the interest for the funds that are not permitted by law to keep their interest. The pooled balance earns interest, but the general fund receives it according to the law. We'll click Save. There is one more investment account that needs an interest receipt posted, and it's different than the others. Our money market account is a pooled investment, so we see several account codes, but the interest is reinvested in the money market account. It does not post to the primary. Notice that reinvest is marked. Make sure that you understand where the interest belongs. So the reinvest and receipt to primary checking have nothing to do with the fund balance distribution. It is simply telling the software which bank account is going to increase with the receipt posting. The list below shows which fund balances are going to increase with the receipt posting. I'm going to mark distribute proportionally by pooled fund balances and enter the amount of the receipt, $139.97. The software automatically distributes among all pooled balances, and I click Save and Close. And the two that were already in the batch, I'll show you. The Star Ohio account is also posted receipt to primary. If your Star Ohio account is reinvested, you should see it looking like that. But notice that doesn't have anything to do with the fund balances. It is simply which bank account is going to increase with the interest posting. And the next is our primary checking. The primary checking is, of course, a pooled investment, and in this case, reinvest is automatically marked and you can't change it. For the primary checking, reinvest and post to primary means exactly the same thing. So reinvest is automatically selected for you in the primary checking account. I didn't make any changes, so I can close without doing any saving. The batch list now contains all of my interest receipts required for my bank reconciliation. Notice that all of the dates are inside the bank reconciliation date. So when I post, the software is going to want me to confirm I am posting 5 selected items. I click OK. And the print form opens telling me I am printing 5 interest receipts and load plain paper. I'm going to choose my printer and click print, and they go off to the printer. I'm going to say yes, this posted successfully, and now I can go back to my bank reconciliation and clear the items on my statements. So usually it's a good idea to start by entering your interest receipts and then starting your bank reconciliation. So notice the software is going to tell me that transactions have been posted. Some calculations may have changed. Well, of course, I wanted that to happen. I needed those interest receipts so I can clear them. Back on the bank reconciliation, I can now click on the Primary Receipts tab and clear all of the receipts on my primary checking. Turn to page 23 and I will explain the items I'm clearing. I'm going to make this a full screen so you can see better. As I look down my deposits and credits, I see a deposit for $800. I'm going to clear that item by checking the box. A deposit of $8,414. Notice that I have deposit tickets numbered, and the software is showing me that the total of deposit ticket 9 matches the bank statement cleared balance. I'm going to show you this when we get to receipts. Notice how the bank statement has the total of all these receipts, and the UAN software will group them together by a deposit ticket number. You establish the numbers and can use this function to make bank reconciliation easier. Please be aware the person that you are following may not have been using deposit ticket numbers, making it much harder. You would have to determine which of the individual receipts add up to the $8,414. Our next receipt is $350. I clear that item. We have a $20,000, $897.21. Another $7,142, and that's our deposit ticket number 11, clearing those 2 receipts. And then the last are our interest receipts. Star Ohio, the 2 CDs, and my primary checking. So that's the total of all the receipts that cleared my primary statement. Notice in the bottom, the total cleared receipts should match your bank statement's cleared receipts. I can save my progress, but I won't lose it unless I exit without saving. On the Primary Payments tab, notice that the electronic payments are listed first, followed by the warrants, and at the bottom, if you have direct deposit of wages, you would see those electronic batch wages. We would clear the items just like we cleared receipts. Whatever is on the bank statement must be cleared in the UAN software. I'm not going to make you watch that. There we are in the magic of UAN training land. Our bank reconciliation primary payments have been cleared, and you didn't have to wait for me to do that. So all I've done is check marked the boxes of the items that cleared on the bank statement. What I want you to see is the EFT wage batches. Just like the deposit tickets, batch wages that are sent to the bank as an EFT, electronic deposit into the employee's bank accounts, can be grouped together as a batch in the UAN payroll process and cleared as one item. So on my bank statement, I'm going to see the $6,492.68, and I can clear that as a batch. All of these wages were included in that amount. If you don't group the batch together in the payroll process, then you're going to be clearing these one at a time. So if the previous fiscal officer was posting EFT wages but not using the EFT batch, you're going to want to start posting those to make your bank reconciliations easier. Notice when I cleared that last item, the red X in the bottom left corner turns to a green check mark. When I look at the Reconciliation and Post tab, I can see that there is no difference between my bank account and my UAN software. I have reconciled with the bank. I'm going to save my progress. Later in this training, we're going to show you the things to do before you post the final bank reconciliation. Often it is a very good idea to save and close and then come back to the bank reconciliation after you've checked other areas in your work for the month. Once you're ready to post the bank reconciliation, you're going to click Edit and Post, come to the Reconciliation and Post tab, and click Post Print. The software is going to tell you it's sending a report to the printer, and it will ask if all items printed successfully. We'll say yes, they did, and close our print form. That completes the first bank reconciliation. So in your first month's survival guide, the very first thing you're going to need to do is last month's bank reconciliation as soon as the statements have been received. So you'll need to understand which banks are sending statements, which investments may not receive a statement, and be prepared to do that bank reconciliation. We're now at the top of page 28. What is the budgetary process? And I'm not going to read you everything listed there in that section because you have probably already watched the prerequisite accounting videos explaining the budget process. You can read this just to refresh your memory. We're going to start at the bottom. Where do you need to start in the budgetary process? Many of you watching this video were newly elected starting office on April 1st. It will be important for you to determine if the permanent appropriations have been adopted and have been entered in the UAN software. So let's just check and see what appropriations have been entered in the UAN software. We're going to go to Accounting, Maintenance, because we maintain the budget under Maintenance, and Appropriation Budgets. We can see that temporary appropriations have been entered for the funds we see listed here. The permanent appropriations have not been entered in UAN, and we don't know whether the board has adopted them unless I start looking back at the minutes and copies of the legislation that were adopted. So in the book on page 28, and then continuing on 29, the question is answered: our temporary appropriations have been entered. The second question, did the entity pass permanent appropriation legislation? We would look at our minutes to determine if the appropriation was adopted, simply not entered in UAN. If it has not been adopted, at your next board meeting, they are going to have to adopt appropriations. You will not be able to spend money until appropriations are in place. Temporary appropriations expire by law on March 31st. If you take office April 1st and no permanent appropriations have been adopted, your board has to adopt permanent appropriations before bills can be paid. In the book on page 30 and 31, we have a sample appropriation resolution. This is a sample. Your appropriation resolution may not look like this. The sample resolution is showing an example of the minimum legal level of control. This level of control gives the fiscal officer the most ability to reallocate. Let's continue with our verification. On page 32, this is the certification we must have accurate in the software even before we enter the permanent appropriations. Review the documents that were passed on to you from the previous fiscal officer to locate the 2016 amended certificate certified by your county budget commission or county auditor. A sample amended certificate is listed on page 32. Yours is not going to look exactly like this. The combined total of the taxes and other sources columns are going to be equal to the revenue budgets in your UAN software. Let's verify that is accurate. I'm going to close out of appropriation budgets, and we're going to look at a report that will show us the answer. Accounting, reports and statements, and budgetary reports. The first item available is resources available for appropriation, and that is the report I want to use for the year 2016. I'm going to select all my funds and click display. At home, you will probably print to make sure you have a copy on file. The resources available for appropriation far right column, total estimated resources, should balance with the total on your amended certificate. If it doesn't, you must investigate further. We need to know if the estimated revenue column by fund matches the combined total of taxes and other sources. If it does not, that means your county auditor has not certified the same numbers entered in UAN. You would need to make UAN match the certification of the county auditor. If the estimated revenue matches the total of taxes and other sources, then the previous fiscal officer did not certify the correct fund balances, reserve for encumbrance, reserve non-spendable balance, reserve balance, or prior year advances not repaid. Those first columns make up the total of the unencumbered balance column on your amended certificate. You would need to compare this with what you see on the amended certificate. This report only shows the total revenue budgets for each fund. It's a snapshot. If you see a difference between the estimated revenue on this report and the combined total of taxes and other sources, you would need a different report to see the account code level. Let's take a look. We would look at revenue reports. We could use either the revenue status or select the revenue budget from the drop-down list. I would select all of my accounts and print or display. Notice that the revenue budget report and the revenue status as well will show us each account code, each description, and the budget that's been entered in UAN. The report will show the subtotal by fund, and I can compare these numbers to the resources available, estimated revenue. If the county auditor has made a change, I would need to know which accounts I need to adjust in the UAN software. For example, if the county auditor is not accepting my $140,000 for the general property tax real estate, keep in mind that account code 10535 in this township example, property tax allocation, also represents a part of taxes that could be combined for the taxes column on the amended certificate. If you're not certain which account codes are included in the taxes column, please contact your county auditor and ask them if the property tax allocation, they may know that as the rollbacks and homestead, is included in their taxes column. If you need to make a correction to your revenue budgets so it balances with your amended certificate, you would follow the instructions on page 34 and 35 to correct your budgetary entries, and then print a new resources available for appropriation and compare it to your amended certificate again. Now they should match. Once you have verified that your revenue budgets in UAN match your amended certificate's taxes and other sources, you can go back to addressing the permanent appropriation entries. We're going to go back to accounting, maintenance, and appropriation budgets. On pages 37 through 41, we see an example of a fiscal officer's worksheet showing the breakdown of the appropriations on the legislation to individual account code numbers. This is the level they must be entered into the UAN software. To enter permanent appropriations, I click the Add button and I select Permanent Appropriations. The software is going to explain to me that permanent appropriations can be saved once per fund. What this means is you look at your legislation, create the worksheet so that you have account code level detail to enter, and then you're ready to enter them in the software. You can't enter just a few account codes by fund and then do the rest later. One fund must be done at a time. We're going to click OK, and from the drop-down list we would choose our first fund. For the sample, I'm going to click the General Fund, and I'm going to enter the appropriations from the Fiscal Officer's Account Code Worksheet. Now there's no reason for you to have to watch me do this entire list. Let's use a little training magic and make this happen quickly. Alright, it's a real shame you all don't have a training fairy at your office, but you'll have to do the work that you see on the screen. Before you press save, you are always going to verify that you have the correct amount. Notice in the bottom left corner, revised current year final appropriation. This has to match the total fund appropriation on your legislation adopting permanent appropriations. If it doesn't match, you've entered a number wrong. You'd have to check your work. The effective date should be the date of the legislation. In our example, the board adopted these appropriations at their March meeting, so the effective date is the date it was actually adopted in March. And I'm going to enter March 3rd. Now I'm going to click Save, and the software is going to show me the permanent appropriation entered will be marked as the original appropriation. That's relevant to the annual financial report at year end. In addition, the current final revenue budget for this fund is going to be marked as the original revenue budget. That's why you always check your revenue budgets before entering permanent appropriations. The effective date is exactly what I intended, and to accept these amounts, I'm going to click OK. The software goes blank in the bottom left corner. It shows me that it saved the permanent appropriations for Fund 1000, and I'm going to choose the next fund from the drop-down list, the Gasoline Tax Fund. Notice that the General Fund is no longer available to add. Again, I'm not going to make you watch this process. We're going to use the training fairy to complete the work. Alright, the training fairy has completed all of the entries. Notice from the drop-down list, there are no more funds that have permanent appropriations that can be entered. So we close the form, and we can see in the far right column, each of the funds now has a permanent appropriation. On page 42, print the comparison of budget and appropriated to check your final figures. We're going to go to Accounting, Reports and Statements, Budgetary Reports, and from the drop-down list we'll choose Comparison of Budget and Appropriated. Selecting all of our funds, and I'll click Display. You can print at home. Our final appropriation column is going to match our appropriation legislation. If you see that it doesn't match, you would need to correct your entries. There are steps to correct the budget entries if you made a mistake, starting on page 43 and continuing. We would print this for our file to show that it's correct. Notice the far right column, Variance, shows us the amount still available for the board to appropriate. You should never see a negative in this column. It means the board has appropriated more than their amended certificate allows. To see a report with the appropriations listed by account code, we're going to go to Appropriation Reports. I'm going to close these forms. Appropriation Reports. I could use the appropriation status, or from the drop-down list, choose the appropriation budget. Select all of my accounts, and I'll display this for you. You would print at home. This report is going to show all of the appropriations in the final appropriation column. Any amounts carried over from the prior year are in the Reserve for Encumbrance 1231, and anything closed that was carried over is in the Reserve for Encumbrance 1231 adjustment column. I'm going to close that report and close that form. On page 45, important budgetary reminders. We want to remind you that the budget is simply a plan for estimated revenue and spending. The budget does not put money into the entity's bank account. You don't have it available to spend until you actually have the cash in the bank. So the fund balance will represent the cash available in each fund. The budget represents the plan. And now we're on purchase orders. On page 46, you see purchase orders, key software concepts. I hope you've already watched the accounting prerequisite videos. We covered purchase orders in depth, the difference between the 4 types of purchase orders, and when and how those would be used. We're not going to repeat that information, but simply show you how to add and post purchase orders in the UAN software. One of the first things you'll need to do is on page 51. You need to know what purchase orders are already in place for future purchases. Did the previous fiscal officer enter the permanent appropriations and the purchase orders that are going to be used for the rest of the year on items that they already know will need certified? Or did they simply leave that work for you to do? So we're going to go to accounting and reports and statements and purchase order reports. At your office, you can look at the printed purchase orders and blanket certificates. They're going to give you the same information that you could see on the report that I'm showing you. You'll need to know if any of your blanket certificates have expired. The only purchase order report that would show the expiration date is going to be the purchase order export. We select this report from the drop-down list, and notice that all of the action buttons in the bottom right corner have been grayed out except for export. Now I want to select the items in the list and click export. The software is going to show me that it's saving a purchase order export report, and I click save. All reports generated from the UAN software as export or PDF are going to be saved to the UAN e-files folder. Let me show you how to find that folder. We're going to click on the Microsoft Start button and choose Computer. We double click on the local disk C and the UAN e-files folder is listed there. When I double click, I can find the purchase order export that I created today. Now this report is going to show me the important expires date that none of the other reports would show. Remember that your original printed purchase order would have that information. You can easily find the expiration date on the original purchase order. So this report is revealing to me that several of the purchase orders have expired. The expiration date means no further purchases can be made against this purchase order. The authority expired on 3/31/16 for many of them and 12/31/15 from some of the others. So the ones dated in 2015 means that the purchase was authorized on a purchase order in the prior year, but the bill didn't come before year end. The purchase order was carried over. No new charges can be made against the purchase order after the expiration date, but the bill will still need to be paid. And the same is true for these blanket certificates that expired on 3/31. Not only can we not make new charges against these blanket certificates, you are going to need to put new blanket certificates in place for the next period of time to authorize spending between 4/1 and 6/30. It appears that the blanket certificate policy in our Buckeye Township is that the regular blanket certificates are for each quarter. Notice that none of the purchase orders in the list have an expiration date. That's normal. We can close this report. You can also print the purchase order detail, but that really wouldn't be necessary if you can find the original purchase orders. I'm just going to select a couple of items and display that report. It's going to print one page for every purchase order. So if you have 300 purchase orders, it's going to print on 300 pages. You may just want to view this report. Moving forward, we're going to go to page 52, How to Open Purchase Orders. Let's close this report form and go to Accounting, Transactions, and Purchase Orders. Beginning on page 55, there are several examples of adding purchase orders. I'm going to perform these exercises so you can see how the form works. I click the Add button and choose the type. Our first purchase order is going to be a new purchase order, and it's regular. I choose my vendor from the drop-down list. The vendor is the treasurer of state. This is one of those vendors that could have multiple uses. So since the treasurer of state has often different locations for EPA fees, debts, and your UAN and audit fees, you would have different locations that need to be selected. I'm going to choose the location for my UAN and audit fees. Over to the right, notice that the expires date is not green. That means it's not a required field. But the issue date and certified date are required. The issue and certified date are generally today's date. I am just now starting this purchase order to authorize spending the rest of this fiscal year. So my issue date is going to be our today date, which is April 1st. Notice that you can also click on today, and it will choose the today date of your computer. The area at the top is the detail area. If you don't have internal requisition numbers, you can leave that requisition number blank, but you must have a quantity in the quantity field. We're going to enter 1. There is not always a unit description to put in here. That can be skipped if necessary. And our description from the book is 3/4 UAN lease. And our total for those 3/4 is 2295. I now have to distribute. This is the total amount of the purchase order. You can see it in the upper box. And now I have to distribute it to the account codes that it will be spent from. I'm going to look for account code 1,110,313. Uniform Accounting Network Fees. I press enter or click the up arrow to move the line into the box. And then I can mark remember date until form closes so that the same dates appear for the purchase orders I'm adding, and click save. Now remember, I am doing PO regulars, so our next example is another purchase order regular, and I'm going to add Sparkly Electric. This is going to authorize the electric bill payment for the rest of the year. So I estimate all of the electric bills we're going to pay for the rest of the year are going to be a total of $9,000. Now I have to distribute that. So in the distribution area, in the drop-down list, I can choose them one at a time by typing in the account number and then selecting it from the list. And again, it's going to default to the unencumbered balance of the appropriation account. There isn't $9,000 available on this one appropriation account, but there's $900 available, so the software is prompting me, do you want to use the full unencumbered balance? Often you don't, but in this case, the electricity account code is only going to be spent on electricity, and that is exactly what I want to do. Encumber the full appropriation for electricity. When I select the second account code, I want to show you another shortcut. The account codes are always in account code order, but you can use the headings to sort them by account name. Notice they're now listed alphabetically, and if I scroll down to electricity, I can choose the next account. In the list on page 56, that would be 2021-330-351. And the amount is $2,400. Again, the unencumbered balance of this account is going to be fully encumbered. The list is going to stay alphabetical unless I change it back to account code. So I'm going to scroll down and choose the next account, the cemetery fund for $2,400. Notice my undistributed balance is reducing as I enter account codes. The park fund, $900, and then the last is our fire and EMS fund, $2,400. Once I distribute that fully, my undistributed amount is 0, and I can click save. And that completes our second example. Oh, notice that this is telling me save the purchase order without a vendor location. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to cancel. Notice in the upper box, I had not chosen a location. And the location means the address that you want to appear on the check. So Sparkly Electric has multiple addresses, and I want to choose the account where I send the bill. Sometimes your vendors will have multiple addresses, and you'll need to choose the correct one on the purchase order so that the payment generates with the address. Now I can click Save. I'm going to add a third purchase order for the employer share of medical benefits. So from our drop-down list, we're going to choose the Great Insurance Company. My dates are exactly the same. I'm authorizing the spending for the rest of the year. And the invoice address, because there was only one, automatically defaulted into the purchase order. My quantity is 1. Skipping the unit price. Employer share of medical and life. And that is the full amount that I am setting aside for the year. Now I need to use the distribution at the bottom to allocate that to different appropriation accounts. And again, the alphabetical list is going to be easy for me to use. Because my account codes are specifically medical and hospitalization, this is the account code we pay the insurance from, and I can choose that amount. And we are fully encumbering this detail account code for this purpose. It's not always so easy. All right, once the last entry is made, the undistributed amount is 0, and I can save. On page 58, there is an example of an internal requisition. If your entity used printed requisitions, you would fill out your purchase order from that. And in this example, our fire chief is requesting a purchase order and has already received approval that this purchase order can be issued by the fiscal officer. You have to understand your internal policies that will allow the purchase order to be posted. The first purchase orders we did were purchase orders for the expenses the fiscal officer knows needs to be in place, such as your utilities for the rest of the year, the medical and hospitalization. There is no point in doing a monthly purchase order. You can set that money aside for the rest of the year's invoices. But this one is something that is needed for one thing. The fire chief wants to send 5 employees to training, so we're going to add the purchase order as he's requested and has been approved. Our vendor is going to be the Center for Training Excellence, and I find that on my requisition. If the requisition has a number, I enter it in the box. My quantity is 5. And the unit price is $250. Notice that the total is automatically calculated using the quantity and the unit price. Now we're going to distribute. And our account code, sometimes your requisitions do not say what account code. They simply say what fund to use, and you have to understand the account code. And we're using training services, and for the full amount of $1,250. I can save this form. That's the last of our purchase order examples, so I'm going to go ahead and close. Once you have them added, notice that they're sitting in the batch list waiting for you to post, or if you don't need one, you could delete. So if you find you already did a purchase order in the list, you could simply delete it from the batch so you don't post it again. The batch number that you see here is an internal software number. It is not going to be the purchase order number once these are posted. Until an item is posted, it is not given a purchase order number. I can select the items in the batch, and I would select all in this case. Remember that you don't have to select all. If you only want this purchase order, you can mark it and click Post Print, leaving the other items in the batch. I'm going to select them all and click Post Print. The software is confirming I want to post 4 selected items. The print form opens, showing that it is posting 4 purchase order regulars, and I click Print. I'm going to close my printer message. And did all items print successfully? Always wait until they're out of the printer and say yes. That completes our purchase order examples. Let me show you a blanket certificate. If you've watched the prerequisite videos, you understand that a blanket certificate is for multiple vendors setting aside an appropriation account, just one account, for spending of a type rather than to a specific vendor. Okay, now we're ready to add the blanket certificates on the bottom of page 58. In this exercise, we're going to add 2 blanket certificates for office supplies, one for the fiscal officer and other administrative staff, and one for the fire department. You may have more. I'm going to click Add and choose BC Regular. And notice that the vendor is no longer green. It is not a required field on a blanket certificate. Putting a vendor on a blanket certificate defeats the purpose of setting aside money so that multiple vendors can be used. Notice there's no expires date, but it's green. Blanket certificates must have an expiration date, and those expiration dates are internally set at your entity. Your governing board adopted a policy that said that regular blanket certificates are going to be for this length of time. Now, they must expire by December 31st. You cannot continue spending off a blanket certificate after year end. So we're going to choose the issue date of 4/1, and because we have the software set to default to 1 quarter, the expires date will automatically complete. You may have to type that in. Our certified date is also the 1st, and I don't have a requisition number. I am simply going to enter 1. I do not need a description, and I put in the amount that we're setting aside, $750. And in the bottom section, we are going to distribute this. And again, I can choose to sort these by account name and find the accounts for office supplies. 1,110, 410 is the one I'm choosing. And I'm setting aside the $750. I'm going to remember date until form closes because I have more blanket certificates for the quarter to enter. Save, and then I can do the next. This blanket certificate is for $500. They won't all be the same. And again, office supplies. And this is for the fire department. And press enter. Save, and I'm going to go ahead and close. You get the idea how to do a blanket certificate. Select all and click post print, and the print form shows we are printing 2 regular BCs. Yes, those items printed successfully. All right, beginning on page 60, we're going to add some more blanket certificate regulars. So I choose BC Regular, and again, we are not using a vendor. I am choosing my issue date, today. The software is showing that it's going to expire on June 30th because I've set the default to be 1 quarter automatically. And we're going to do a blanket certificate for $2,500. I'm going to distribute that to 2041, 410, 420, and the $2,500 is there. Remember date until form closes and save. My next BC is also for $2,500, and our account code is 2191 220 420. Authorizing operating supplies to be purchased by the fire department. Remember that your internal policies are going to govern who spends from these accounts. Save and close. I'm going to mark those and post. Sending them to the printer, and I'm saying yes, they printed successfully. Now we want to add a super blanket certificate. A blanket certificate regular can only have 1 blanket certificate in an account code during the same period of time. So for the operating supplies and office supplies where I just added a regular BC, I can't add a second regular BC for the same time period. However, the super blanket certificates can be used, so we're going to add a super BC to set aside fuel in the operating supplies account we had just opened the regular BCs in. So I'm going to choose super BCs, and notice that the super BCs, according to our policy, expire in December. Your policy may say they're for a quarter as well. Our issue date is April 1st. And we're going to choose 1, and this is going to set aside the amount of money we think we will use for fuel. And I think I want that in the description. So I can type that in. If I skipped it, you can always type in the description. In the account code field, we're going to enter 2191 220 420. I select that account. This is the same account I just put the regular BC on. So any other purchases they make, batteries for flashlights, little things that they go and buy, it's going to be made off the regular BC. The fuel purchases, because sometimes they get fuel at different gas stations, is going to be on the super BC. Save and close, and mark it and post it. Confirm that I want to print one item. And yes, it's printed successfully. Later, I'll show you an example of a then and now purchase order. Remember, then and now means somebody spent without the proper authority in place. It is always a red flag that someone spent money improperly. So I'll show you that when we get to paying bills. Okay, in UAN Training Land, the date is now April 5th. If you look in the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll see that several days have passed. You've been working hard, checking your verification of bank balances, reconciling the previous month, making sure your revenue budgets match your amended certificate and your permanent appropriations have been entered and they match your legislation. You've put in the purchase orders so that the spending can continue according to the law. And now we are on cash transactions beginning on page 63. Note that there are key software concepts you're going to want to read through on page 64, 65, and the top of page 66. If you want to know what account code you should use on a receipt, you can look at the prior fiscal officer's receipt postings. Keep in mind, if the previous fiscal officer was cited several times in the last audit for posting revenue to the wrong accounts, you would never want to use their account code examples. But if you're following in the footsteps of someone that has done a very good job, you can use the receipt detail report to find what account codes are used on your receipts. The steps to access are accounting, reports and statements, and receipt reports. Notice that receipt detail is the first item on the drop-down list, so you don't need to make a selection. The report is automatically going to default to the last month items were posted. The last month receipts were posted was in March. I want to see more examples, so I can mark this for the year. You could also change the drop-down list for the year to the previous year and look at receipts from the previous year. You would select the items in the list, and you can either display or print. The receipt detail report simply contains the details of each individual receipt. You could, of course, page through the hundreds of receipts you see from last year, or you can use the receipt detail report. Notice that you're going to be able to see the post dates, the vendor, and the account code used for specific items. To post a receipt, you can find the steps to access on page 67. We'll close this form and go to Accounting, Transactions, and Receipts. On the receipt form, we see there are no receipts in the batch. That means I have nothing prepared waiting for me to post. If I want to add a new receipt, I click the Add button. If you look at the examples of money received on page 70 through 72, you can see an example how money is deposited by only the fiscal officer. Other people may be collecting money, but the fiscal officer is doing all the depositing in this example. On page 70, we see the Park and Recreation Manager has collected $150 from the Sunset Riding School. When employees other than the fiscal officer are collecting money, they should have their own receipt book. When they write a receipt to a customer, a duplicate is turned in to the fiscal officer. This is the duplicate along with the $150 cash. The second item on page 70 is a check that the fiscal officers received in the mail from Faraway Township for their fire contract. On page 71, we received a check from the county auditor for $351,108.40. We have got to get this in the bank immediately. And on page 72, you see the deposit ticket completed by the fiscal officer depositing all this money. Let's post receipts for all these items. We click the Add button and choose Standard. The first two are standard receipts. On the Add Receipt form, the first thing we do is select the source. The drop-down list contains all of the vendors that have been added available in accounting receipts. If I scroll down, I can find Sally Bay, our Park and Recreations Director. I complete the purpose box with information from the receipt. When somebody turns a receipt in to me from the money they've collected, I always include that in my purpose box. The deposit ticket number is an internal number. If you remember from the bank reconciliation, when several items are on a deposit ticket, like on page 72, we have cash and 2 checks, I'm going to give this deposit ticket an internal number. In our case, it's deposit ticket number 12. And on the bank reconciliation, all of the receipts posted to deposit ticket 12 will be totaled and included in this deposit ticket number. Let's talk about our receipt, deposit, and post date. Well, most of the time we receive the money, deposit the money, and post the receipt on the very same day. So in my case, I am receiving the money today, April 5th, and I'm depositing it in the bank as soon as I'm finished with this receipt, and I am posting it in the software the very same day. The post date needs to match as closely as possible the date that it's going to appear on your bank statement. Now, if you deposit this at the bank today, but it ends up being the next banking day, that's not going to be a problem. The auditors can clearly see that you took the money to the bank on the same day, and the bank has posted it the next day on your statement. It will not create a problem. The next thing I need is the revenue code to post the receipt. Our account code is 2171802, and I can select that from my drop-down list. The amount is $150. I received $150 from Sally Bay, who collected it from the customer. I'm going to click Remember Date until form closes because I have another receipt to post, and click Save. Our next receipt is from the Faraway Township. I can start typing, and if it appears, I can select it from the drop-down list. I'm going to type the purpose in the box, put in my deposit ticket number, and the dates have been remembered from the previous receipt. The revenue account number is 2191201. I select it from the list and type in 2638. Save. And that is all of the standard receipts I need for this deposit ticket. Notice that they are in the batch list waiting for me. And in our exercise, we're going to go ahead and post these items. I choose Post Print, confirm I want to post the 2 selected items, and click Print on the print form. Yes, these items have printed successfully. The last receipt on our deposit ticket from page 72 is the county auditor's receipt. The county auditor's distribution of tax is more complex than a standard receipt. If you watch the prerequisite accounting videos, we showed you the difference between a standard and a memo receipt. We click Add and choose Memo, and the memo receipt add receipt form looks very different than the standard receipt form. We have revenue distribution at the top and the memo charges at the bottom. You have to figure out your county auditor's distribution sheet to determine the gross amount of taxes collected and the amount of fees divided by the funds to enter as charges. The net deposit, the difference between the gross less the fees, will be the total of this receipt. So the first thing we want to do is choose our county auditor from the drop-down list. I'm going to type my purpose in the box. Our dates are the same. I have received the money today, I am depositing the money today, and I am posting the receipt today. My revenue codes are going to be general property tax, real estate, and if I want to group all of those account codes for all the funds together, I click on account name and then scroll down to the G's. General property tax, real estate, the general fund. $91,000 was received. While I'm entering this, you can look back on page 71 at the real estate first half tax settlement sheet. This is a very simple example of what you might receive from your county auditor. We've really simplified this. You will probably need to call your county auditor's office to understand the fund distribution of all of the revenue and expenditures. So the general fund receives $91,000. I press enter and choose the next fund. 2031. And the Road and Bridge Fund receives $7,020. The Cemetery Fund has a levy and it received $75,205. The Park Levy received $37,050. And the Fire Levy is receiving $143,650. We realize these numbers will probably not be realistic for all of our entities watching the video. If I look at the tax settlement sheet, I can see that the gross revenue of $353,925 has been entered correctly, and now I'm ready to put my fees in. Notice there's a county health district fee for $870. That is the only fee on our sample that is not posted to a direct account. This account requires a purchase order, and for purchase orders that are going to be used on the tax distribution memo receipt, we recommend a BC with no vendor. So from my drop-down list, I choose BC and then select the BC. And I put in the amount. Notice that it defaults to the full unspent balance of this blanket certificate. My fees are only $870, so I enter the right amount. Now the rest of our fees are posted to direct accounts. They don't require a purchase order. So I'm going to choose from the drop-down list, direct. I'm going to sort these again by account name, and if I click again, it will reverse the order. So I can come down here to tax collection fees, and the general funds fees are $500.50. Now the Road and Bridge Fund, direct. I choose my account, tax collection fees, 2031. The amount is $38.61. Direct. My cemetery fund, 2041, 413.63. Direct. Park levy, 2171, 203.78. And the last one, direct. Fire and EMS, 2191, 790.08. Now I check and make sure that my fees match my tax distribution sheet, $2,816.60. I've entered them correctly, and my total deposit is the net amount of taxes, the amount of the check I received, $351,108.40. I can click Save and Close. And I'm going to go ahead and post the memo receipt. Yes, it printed successfully. All right, now we're at the bottom of page 74. This is what it looks like when someone else does the banking. So in our larger entities, maybe only the fiscal office is depositing the money at the end of the day. However, the smaller entities may have several people collecting and depositing. They turn in the deposit slips at the bank and bring the fiscal officer a copy of their collection receipts and a duplicate deposit slip. In that case, the fiscal officer is simply going to post a receipt into their books. Our example on the bottom of page 74 is from our cemetery sexton. He has already deposited the money in the bank and has included, and on page 75 you see the duplicate receipts he's given the fiscal officer to go with those. The total of the receipts is equal to the total of the deposit ticket he's turned in. Let's go ahead and post our receipt. We'll click the Add button and choose Standard. And from our drop-down list, if we've entered the cemetery sexton, and we have, buried deceased, our cemetery sexton, is listed and we can choose him. From the purpose box, we're going to type Sale of Lots and open close fees. Receipts number 60275, 60276, and 60277. There isn't a deposit ticket number because this was not deposited by the fiscal officer. This is going to be one deposit on the bank statement. Now the receipt, deposit, and post dates are probably going to be different because the cemetery sexton probably turned this in the morning the day after he's made the deposit. So if I look at my receipts and the deposit ticket, I can see that he received and deposited this money at the bank yesterday. So I want my receipt date to be the 4th, I want my deposit date to be the 4th, and I want my post date, the day it's posting to my bank statement, is going to be the 4th. Now let's enter the revenue. The receipts that he gave us will have to be looked at to determine the account codes going to be used. And we can see that 2041804, our sale of cemetery lots, will receive $1,600. And 2041302, fees, receives the open and close fees collected. My total receipt matches the deposit ticket of $2,300. I can click Save and Close. I'm going to mark that and post it and send it to the printer. So you may have other people making deposits and turning in the documentation. We'll say, yes, this item has posted successfully. Beginning on the bottom of page 76 is an example of direct deposited money to your primary checking account. All revenue from the state will be in the form of a direct deposit. You have to access the Department of Taxation's website to obtain the details on this money. Some counties also direct deposit tax receipts. Some we're going to send you the details for that deposit in the mail, and some will require you to look it up online like the state does. If you do not have access to these details before your bank statement is received, you will have to post these direct deposits back to the date they were received before you can do your monthly bank reconciliation. We'll go ahead and do a receipt for the direct deposit of our gasoline tax. We click the Add button and choose Standard. And this is coming from the Treasurer of State. We'll put in gas tax revenue, and when money is direct deposited, I like to indicate that in the purpose box. Remember, there's not going to be a deposit ticket number. This was directly deposited to your account. If I know the date that it hit my bank account, some of you have online banking. Those of you who can look on the website to see the date that that was distributed can know from that date. But we're going to backdate this to the date that it hit the bank account, and we can see that that was April 1st. So I'm going to date all of my dates. Direct deposits are received, deposited, and posted on the same day. Save. Notice if I try to save without completing a required form, the red dots appear. If you hover over the red dot, it tells you this field is required. I tried to save before I entered the revenue codes. Let's enter those revenue codes. 2021537. And I select that from the list and enter the amount. Now, notice the red dot did not go away, but I did complete the field required. When I click Save, the bottom left corner confirms it was saved, and I can close and post this item. So that shows 3 different methods and 2 types of receipts. Remember, we saw interest receipts posting this morning. And yes, those items printed successfully. That completes our section on receipts at the end of page 77. Moving forward, we're on page 78. What should I do when I receive an invoice? You want to read that section. Make sure that you understand when you are permitted to pay bills between meetings. There are some permissions granted when online payments need to be made, or when a warrant needs to be issued between meetings to avoid a late penalty. So make sure you understand your permissions. When can you prepare payments or make online payments between meetings? Don't exceed your authority. Generally, you're going to make sure that you understand as a bill arrives, where is it going to be paid from? What purchase order or blanket certificate was it spent against? And if you are making those notes as the bills come in, when you are preparing for your meeting, those bills will be ready for you to enter into the software. What is a payment? Well, let's go to payments. We're already in accounting and transactions. I'm going to choose payments, and the payment form opens. The batch list is empty because I haven't began preparing items. I simply click the Add button to begin. When you click the Add button, you see the 3 different types of payments that can be generated. There's really 2 types. Warrant means you're going to print a check, and electronic means you're making an electronic payment of some type. The software will not connect to any website and make a payment for you. Electronic simply means money has been taken from your bank account electronically, either by the bank as a fee or by a vendor that you've paid online, or a bill that you have set up to pay automatically. Manual is those rare occurrences when you have to handwrite a check. Handwritten checks are always a red flag. You want to avoid that whenever possible. We have very good fiscal officers in office for years. They've never written a manual check. Make sure that you understand that when you handwrite a check, you must still enter it in the software. You will still have to have a purchase order in place, and it will still be entered in check numbered order. You cannot handwrite checks and then start posting warrants from the software without entering those handwritten checks in the software. Manual is for those times where we know there's an ice storm, the electricity's off for 6 days, and you still have to prepare bills for your meeting to be approved. So in that rare instance, the auditor would not frown at what you've done. They would just verify that every single handwritten check has been entered exactly into the software as it was spent. In the book, what account code should I use on this payment? If you have a good fiscal officer's books to look back on, you can use the payment register detail report to see how that was set up and paid. Let me show you. Accounting, reports and statements, and payment reports. It is not the payment listing. The payment listing would only show you the basic information like you see on the screen. The payment register detail shows the details. This is going to show you every payment, accounting, and payroll that has been posted in the software. But if you only want to see one type, so let's say the type accounting, If you are sure that it is a warrant, you can change to eliminate the other type that you don't want to see. I would recommend marking it for the year, and you can click the payee at the top of the list to sort them by vendors. So you can see alphabetically they're sorted. So if you wanted to see how the garbage bill was paid, you can simply go to this screen, sort them, and check a couple of them and display that. Once you're in the display mode, you might want to pull this check number and check the invoice. Why is it being paid from these account codes? So you could look at the bills and determine how it was split up in this way. You would want to look at check multiple invoices on these past payments to see if there's a reason the account codes change payment to payment. So the payment register detail can be very helpful. If you need to look back into last year, remember you can change the year to 2015. You would want to make sure your filters tab is where you want. You can still find the vendors. So if the vendor hasn't been paid this year, if it's an annual payment, you can always look back in the prior year. And remember, you need to be aware of whether you're looking back at a good fiscal officer's records or whether you're looking back on someone whose mistakes you should never repeat. Be very careful using those as an example. How to add a payment, back on page 79. We have the steps to access, but remember in the software, if you are at the form, Accounting Transactions and Payments, the FAQs in the bottom of your screen will show you these step-by-step instructions at a glance. What's in the book, this manual is only going to be used for a short time. You still have those step-by-step instructions as a guide. So let's talk about the bills that we see in our examples in the book. On page 82, you can see that an example of electricity bills. Electricity bills for larger entities, townships, villages, fire districts, and libraries that have multiple locations. The electric bills are going to come in, and the description on the bill may not tell you where that is. So the first thing you may have to do is figure out which bill goes with what location and make yourself a cheat sheet. So on this page, you see our electric bills cheat sheet. You can create these if you're Excel spreadsheet savvy. You would have little Excel spreadsheets to use as the electric bills start coming in. They don't come all in one day. They will come in spread out over several days. You can start filling in your grid for the month. The bills that are received by your meeting date. Notice that there's a date at the top of there. For those of you that have 2 meetings, you are probably going to pay some electric bills the first meeting and then those that trickle in later at the second meeting. So create your cheat sheets so that you can fill them out as the bills come in and organize them to total up so that you know exactly which department and which account code is going to pay the group of bills. So you're just going to be filling in your grid as the month progresses. When it's time to pay bills, you can tell from your little cheat sheet the total of all the bills is $575.92. And we're going to go to our payment form. We click the Add button and choose Warrant. We're going to print checks for our meeting. Now my vendor is the first thing I'm going to type in. I can either click the drop-down list and choose alphabetically by scrolling down, or I can simply begin typing and the software eliminates my choices alphabetically. So Sparkly Electric is the vendor I want to pay. When the location is blank, it means that you have no location or multiple locations. Some vendors have more than one address. So I'm going to click the drop-down list and choose which address I want to appear on the check. If I use window envelopes, this is especially important. Now my address appears. The post date is important. I am in fake payroll training land on April 5th, and I'm getting ready for my meeting on the 7th. So my post date for the warrants that I'm preparing is the 7th, my meeting date, not today when I'm preparing them. The software lets you advance date up to 30 days. And while 30 days is a long time, it's more likely that you'll be advance dating these because you're getting ready for the meeting in advance. You would never post them for today and take them to the meeting to get signed. They're always posted for the date they're going to be approved and signed. Once I have that information in the upper area completed, I have 2 choices. If I have a purchase order already prepared and you should, of course, then you can import the purchase order information for the detail area, which says what you're purchasing, and the distribution area, which shows the account codes you will be paying from. Now, you can complete either one of these areas manually and import only some information from the purchase order. Let me show you how that works. We're going to click the Import Purchase Order button. It takes me to a second screen. Look, see, it's right on top of the first. I'm going to narrow my selection by type, PO regular, and then choose the purchase orders available. Now, I have two. So in our circumstances in Buckeye Township, when we put in our temporary appropriations at the beginning of the year, I put in a Sparkly Electric purchase order. That purchase order hasn't expired. It's still good, and I can keep spending off of it. Once those account codes start running out on the first purchase order, I start spending from the second. And when the first purchase order is completely spent, I close it, and then we'll continue the rest of the year spending off the second purchase order. So let's start with the first purchase order. And I can see that the original purchase order was for $4,700. Would I want this to pull into my payment? No, I really don't. So if I do, I'm going to have to edit it. I'm going to select the account codes, and the software is going to show me the unspent balance of these account codes. It may not be enough to pay my bill. So I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to import them in. I'm going to type in my detail area. And 575.92 is the total of all the electric bills I'm paying right now. Notice the distribution is not accurate. I'm going to open this up to full screen. The import purchase order has brought each purchase order in at the unspent balance, and I'm going to use the account code heading to sort them into account code order so I don't get them wrong. And then I'm going to check these against what I need for my bill. For this account code, I need $66.02. So I'm going to change the full amount that's unspent to $66.02 to the amount I need on this payment. My road fund, $89. I've still got plenty. $98. And my cemetery, $78.44. And my park, $37.50. And the last one, $303.98. So you can see that I am going to start running out of money soon, and we'll start spending off that second purchase order. Some of these account codes are going to remain available on that first purchase order. If I needed to grab the second purchase order, I can either introduce it one line, just the lines I needed from the bottom area, or import purchase order and grab the accounts I need from the second purchase order. But now that my payment is fully distributed, you can see up here, I'm ready to save. I'm going to minimize this so it's not taking up so much of the screen. I can remember date until form closes because I have more bills to prepare for the meeting on the 7th. And I click Save. Our next example on page 84 is another of the cheat sheets we've given you an example of. During the month, all the employees that buy gas turn in their little sales slips. On it, they are probably writing either their department or the BC number they're spending off of if you use BCs for fuel. Either way, as they turn them in, as the fiscal officer, I have created this grid so that I can keep track, so I don't have to do all the work when I'm ready to pay the payment. When the monthly bill comes in our case, the bill comes from the Corner Gas Mart, I'm going to compare what they're billing me for because maybe every one of these receipts is not on the bill. I would eliminate those that have not been included on the bill and make sure I have all of the sales slips from everybody. If any sales slips are missing, I won't know that till I get the bill. I contact the department heads and see if they've left a slip in the vehicles or laying on a desk somewhere and they need to turn those in. And then I can complete my grid. Now I'm ready to pay the Corner Gas Mart $778.84 for the monthly fuel. And I know exactly what blanket certificate, because we have a blanket certificate for fuel. Some of them are the regular blanket certificates. Remember the fire department, we did a super because that large department with all its vehicles, we wanted to set money aside specifically for fuel on a super. So we're going to start with our vendor on the payment, the Corner Gas Mart, and I can start typing. It's remembering the date. When you're using BC's import purchase orders, kind of a waste of your time because you're only pulling in one account code at a time. So I'm not going to import my BC's. I'm going to say 1 month fuel. And the total amount of the bill, $778.84. And that's my detail. That sets the amount of my payment. I don't have any additional lines to enter, so I'm going to go to the bottom, and at the type drop-down list, I'm going to choose BC, and then I have to choose the blanket certificates that apply. Now, I know my blanket certificate numbers, so I can type them in. The first one is 16, and this is why it helps so much to keep the information up to date as the month moves along. 331.01. My next BC is number 20, and its amount is 346.42. And my last BC is BC 19, and it is going to receive 101.41. And that's the easiest way to introduce blanket certificates. So you can use multiple blanket certificates on your payment. All of these are an operating supplies BC for an individual fund. This is our road, this is our fire levy, this is our park levy. I'm going to save that payment and move forward in the book. We are now on page 86. We have an invoice from our attorney. So I'm going to type the vendor name. Lyon, Cheatham, and Billum is our attorney. You're really going to need to know your purchase orders to know whether you want to import a purchase order or enter BCs from the distribution area one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and complete the upper portion before I import. I'm going to say 1 invoice, legal fees, legislation, and $100. If I tab over, I can enter the invoice number, and the software will keep track of that. Our invoice number is MAR 62587, and I can pop that up in the box. The software will keep track of the invoice numbers you've entered, and if you are trying to pay the same invoice number, you would get a message that told you already paid that. You can always look at the payment history. If you're entering invoice numbers, you would see them listed here. These are the payments we have sent to this vendor. Now that I have the detail area set, I can import my purchase order, or I can add that from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and import just so you can see that again. I want to know the purchase orders I have, and remember that if you have purchase orders that were set up at the beginning of the year, and then when your permanent appropriations were entered, you put the rest of that fixed cost for the year on a second purchase order, you would spend from the first one and then start spending off the second once you needed to. But you have to know your purchase orders. In this case, I would have to know that these were not 2 different purchase orders going to 2 different account codes. So you have to know your purchase orders to know what to import. And I know that this was just the first purchase order off the year, so I can select it. Now I don't want to bring the detail in. It says estimated 2016 legal fees, and that's not what I have in my detail. I need to decide which account code, or is it going to be split between them. So I look at my bill, I see it was for preparation of legislation, and that would be our administrative in our case, in my example. I'm only going to bring one account code over, and the software shows me it's $600 is remaining on there. And I'm going to change that to the amount we are paying. And now we have a fully distributed payment. I could also have just entered that one line off a purchase order from down here. Either way works just as well. Click Save. On page 88 is our next invoice to pay from the gravel pit. So I am going to put my vendor in. Do I have a purchase order? We always pay by one account code, so I'm pretty sure I'm only going to have a one account code purchase order set aside. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the details. 1 invoice, 45 tons of salt. And the amount is $325. And I can enter the invoice number and pop that in the upper portion. Now let me show you how to choose a purchase order from the bottom. When you have a purchase order to the vendor, it adds PO to the choice. And when we select PO, we now have to choose between the POs. And again, I have multiple purchase orders. I would need to know. Notice I have two different ones. I'm going to spend the first one until it's gone. And we're going to go $325. So my bill is exactly distributed to the full amount, and I can click Save and go to my next bill. Our next payment is on page 90. What should you do when you receive an invoice and you do not have a PO or BC in the system to pay it? This is an example of what can happen if your employees are spending without requesting those purchase orders or not spending off of a blanket certificate. So our invoice on page 90 is from Honest Abe, and we can clearly see it was for snow plow repair, $1,675. But when I try to make the payment out to the vendor, all I can see is Honest House Equipment. We do not have Honest Abe. Well, that clearly means I don't have a purchase order to Honest Abe. If the vendor is not listed, there is no purchase order. I would have to look and see if I had a blanket certificate that would cover this. In our case, we don't do blanket certificates for snowplow repair. So I've got a problem because the vendor doesn't exist, and I've got a second problem because there's no purchase order. So let's delete out. We have to leave this box empty, and we will close. So I've got these items in my batch list. I can go home, close the computer. When I come back tomorrow, these are still going to be in place. Let me show you. A batch list means this is a work in progress. I have not completed them. I can still edit them, or I could delete them if I decided I didn't need them anymore. I can continue adding to the list until I'm done. Now we've got a problem. The first problem is I don't have Honest Abe as an active vendor. I have to take a look and see if he's been inactivated. Maybe we used to deal with him, but we don't deal with him anymore. And this is a first time we've gone back to using him. So let's go to General Maintenance. Remember, General is used by multiple modules. So things are set up in general that accounting, payroll, and inventory would use. So we're going to use our vendor payees. I know that he's not on the active list because he wouldn't pull into my payment. I need to look at my inactive list to see if he's listed. And in my case, he's not. You'd make sure you look at that carefully. You don't want to add him again if he already exists. If he was on this list, I would simply mark him and activate, and then go back to the activated list to see if he has any information to update. So he's not in here as a vendor, so I've got a problem. On my bill, I have his phone number. I probably want to give a call to the road superintendent to talk to him as well, because he can't be doing this. He cannot be spending money without requesting a purchase order. I can see that the work was done on April 1st. Why didn't I know about it on April 1st? Well, if it happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think Honest Abe was awake working on the snowplow the 31st. I think that on the 1st, he started working on the snowplow, and I could have been informed to get the purchase order in place. Now, he might not have known the final amount, and that's not a problem. What we need is an estimate up front, a ballpark figure to do the purchase order. So we've got to talk to the road superintendent about that, because he's got to let us know when he's dropped something off for repair so I can get a purchase order in place for an estimate. When I look at the invoice, I can see I have a phone number for Honest Abe, and I'm going to give him a call and tell him, hey, we don't have you as a vendor. I can't make a payment. I want to make sure we get your the name of the company, the address, and the tax ID correct. You're going to probably email him or fax over to him an IRS W-9 form so that you can have him complete that and either fax it back or drop it off at your office. This is another reason why you do bills in advance of your meeting, because sometimes you are waiting for information. Once Honest Abe gets the W-9 back to you, you're going to be able to complete the vendor form with accurate information. We really should have that W-9 in our hands, because once you add a vendor and add a purchase order to the vendor in a payment, you cannot change the vendor name. And sometimes their LLCs name is different than what you see on the invoice. We need to make sure we're getting exactly the right company name and tax ID. So on the form, we're going to click the Add button, and we have the Add Vendor Payee form. I have my W-9 in place, and I'm going to add him as a vendor. Honest Abe. I'm going to make him available in accounting, purchases, and payments. He has absolutely no reason to be activated in receipts, payroll, or inventory. He does work on vehicles. Because this is somebody who is not incorporated, then a 1099 will be required. He has clearly made over $600, and I want to make sure I'm getting his tax ID entered, 4789254. So that at year end, I'm not scrambling to get that. Now, if you are making a payment to a new vendor and they have not provided their tax ID, mark them W-9 needed. It will not let you mark them 1099 without a tax ID or a social security number. And then the software will help you keep track of those vendors that haven't provided that yet. Stay on top of those all year long. If you're going to have to send a 1099, you will have to have that tax ID to do it. So our vendor has provided that. I don't need the W-9 needed. And I can add a location. This is what the payment address is going to be. So the software tells me that the vendor must be saved before entering a location. Save now. Okay. I'm just going to click OK, and the software saved it for me, and I can move forward. The description is just going to be what you're going to use this address for. Billing address. And you're going to complete the information. If you don't have a name and a contact, you could enter these things. If you have the contact information, you don't have to. Click Save and Close. And now I have a location. And since I have one location, it was going to default in to my purchase orders and payments. I'm finished adding Honest Abe, and I can save and close. And I can close my vendor payees, and I'm back on the payments form. Notice my menu is still sitting in general maintenance. To bring that back to where I was, I simply click on accounting and transactions. And if I click on payments, my frequently asked questions will come with me as well. All right, so we're not ready for payments. This was our payment form we're going to come back to. We need to do a purchase order, and it's going to be one of those then and nows. PO then and now means that somebody spent money when there was no purchase order or encumbrance of any kind in place. It always indicates spending without authority. So we're going to do the POs then and now. They should be rare items. Now I can choose Honest Abe. There's his billing address. And my issue date is today. My certify date is today, but my then date is back then on April 1st in this case, the date that he took this vehicle in for service. I am certifying the appropriations were available then. I am certifying them now. So the then date is important to match with your invoice, the first date on that invoice where the work was agreed upon that it was going to be done, or when an item was ordered. So we're going to complete the purchase order. There's no requisition. It is one service to snowplow. The amount $16.75, and I'm going to distribute that 2021 330. Repairs and maintenance. My purchase order is finished. Save and close. Mark it and post print. And that purchase order is going to print. And yes, it completed successfully. I am going to sign the fiscal officer certificate, but it's going to go to the meeting for permissions. Somebody else is going to have to agree that somebody had permission to spend that money. All I'm doing is certifying the appropriations were available and the cash is available. That's your job. Now I'm going to go back to the payments form and add a warrant. Honest Abe is available from the drop-down list now. My post date is still the meeting date, the 7th. And because my purchase order is exactly the bill, because it matches, I'm going to choose PO then and now and import this purchase order completely because it is exactly what I need. Both the top and bottom match the invoice we're paying. I click Save and Close. I know your list of bills would be longer than this for a meeting, but we're not going to go through the entire day in the life of a fiscal officer. We're just giving you examples. I'm going to select my list. It is time to make the payments. I want these all stacked up and ready for the board signature at the meeting. Again, the post date is the 7th. I would never mail these out before that date. And I'm going to select them. Keep in mind that if one of them has to be paid sooner, you can mark it and click Edit. If the electric bill is going to incur a late penalty and you have permission to pay these between meetings, you could change the date, save it and close it and post it now. So you can always edit. You just have to understand your internal permissions and your rules. So I'm going to exit without saving. And in this case, I am selecting all the bills. So if you're new, please don't select an entire list of 80 checks. Select one. Send it to the printer so that if you make a mistake loading the printer, you are not going to ruin all of your checks. Click Post Print. Confirm you're posting one selected item. Always confirm the next check number. So the software shows you that according to what you've posted last, this should be the next check number available. If it's not, if you have accidentally spilled coffee on your stack of checks, if you accidentally left a stack of checks in your printer and have accidentally printed a purchase order or a receipt to them, then those checks have been destroyed and it's not your next check number. You would tell the software that my next check number is really 73. So when it's not really your next check number because you have accidentally destroyed them, you are going to get to the next check number. The software needs to know what is the next real check number, and it will tell you how many warrants you're skipping. That's the number that have been ruined, and you click OK. Now it's going to tell you again, this warrant's been skipped, and we're going to void it in the software. Do you want to continue? Well, that is exactly what you want to do if that's exactly what happened. Those cannot be used again. They're going to be voided. I say OK, and I'm going to get the print form. The software is telling you it's sending one warrant to the printer. Check number 7573 should be loaded, and when you've got that loaded, face down, check towards you, voucher away from you, then you would click Print. Make sure that you're looking at it. Did it come out of the printer correctly? Did you have it upside down or backwards? Now that you know how to load them in the printer, select More. Now for large entities that are doing a large number of checks, I would like you to be in the habit of selecting about 10 at a time, simply because printers jam, even good printers jam. And if you're sending 80 checks to the printer and it jams in the middle, you are going to ruin all of those checks. So we highly recommend about 10 at a time. Simply select a group from the list and click Post Print, and when you get down to the last 10, just select all and post print. So about 10 at a time, no more than 20 at a time. How much work do you want to redo if the printer jams? And we'll click OK. Going to verify the next check number. OK. And it's going to tell me exactly the checks to load in the printer. I highly recommend that you only load those checks so that you're not putting extras in. And click Print. And the software is going to send that off to your printer. And when you see this message, did the items print successfully, don't just rush to click Yes. Wait until everything is out of the printer. Look at all the ones that you printed and make sure they're accurate. If they are, you click Yes. Okay, so what happens if I'm looking at those checks and one of them is not the right amount? I'm going to have to void it. There is no way to change the amount of a posted check so that it appears a different amount to mail out. Let me show you what you're going to do. You're going to go to Accounting, Utilities, Payment Utility. And you can shorten your list. If this is something that hasn't left your hand, it is clearly outstanding. So I can shorten the list to outstanding by changing the status. And then I can find my warrant. The check to the corner gas mart, I got the wrong amount. I was looking at the wrong number on the invoice. It's not right. It's too high. We don't owe them this much money. So I need to void this check because it's not the right amount. Even if it was less money and we owed them more, well, I have two choices. I could do a second check and mail them two checks. But if it's too much, I have got to void it. It's not right. So I'm going to mark it, and the void date is very important. Voiding one selected item, you always have to confirm that's what you want to do. And it is still April 5th in payroll training land. This check was posted for the 7th. I can't void it on the 5th. It's not available until the 7th. So my void date is going to be the same day I posted it, the 7th. So that's going to be very important when you're advanced dating checks and one of them is wrong, you're going to void as the same advanced date. Click OK, and it's not on the outstanding checklist. It is, if I look at all and go to the bottom, it's now been voided right there. So voiding is how you take care of a check that's the wrong amount. This cannot go out in the mail. It is wrong. You cannot change the amount of the check before it goes out the door. So we're finished with the payment utility, and we're finished with payments. You're going to take those to your meeting with the invoices so the board can look at them. We have completed the section on payments at the bottom of page 93. And on page 94, we're going to talk about finalizing the month. In training land, it has just become May 2nd. For training purposes, we move the date forward in order to give you that look back of how you're going to end the month. You are never going to change your computer date at your UAN computer. We simply have to move forward in the month so you can see how you finalized the prior month. The first step, of course, is going to be reconciling with the bank, and you really can't reconcile until you receive your bank statements. All of them. Some of your investments might not receive a monthly statement, so we'll talk about that a bit. I'm going to begin the bank reconciliation process by going to Accounting, Transactions, and Bank Reconciliation. I don't have a bank reconciliation started. You can see my batch is empty, and I'm going to click the Add button to start. I always receive the system message. Note the instructions are provided at the top of each tab on the bank reconciliation form. Review all of these instructions carefully. We also want to remind you to always review the tabs. We'll say OK, and I have to give the as of date. It's a good habit to have your as of date as the last day of the month you are reconciling. That does not always coincide with your statement balances. We'll say OK to that message. And I'm going to open the bank reconciliation form to full screen so we can get a better view. The Add Bank Reconciliation form always opens to the Bank Statements tab. Remember, we have several tabs down the left side. You should always visit each tab and make sure you haven't left something behind. On the Bank Statements tab, it will start with zeros. It will be your responsibility to review your statement balances and enter them here. Let's start with the accounts that have a statement balance. Beginning on page 96, we have some sample monthly bank statements. I'm going to enter the statement balances from these accounts. My primary checking, my secondary checking, my money market checking, Star Ohio, and what's remaining is my 3 certificates of deposit. My CD that is named 151-1931 has a monthly statement. When I review this statement, it tells me the balance of that account is $25,000. The remaining 2 CDs do not receive monthly interest. One receives quarterly interest. I posted the first quarter interest in March, and I won't receive another statement until the end of June. So I have to enter the last statement balance. The other CD doesn't receive any interest until maturity. So its statement balance never changes from the original investment balance when I opened the investment at the bank. I'm going to enter these 2 CD balances. And now I have entered my statement balances completely. So once you have received all of your investment and statement balances, you'll be able to start the process. I'm not ready to clear items yet because I haven't entered the investment interest. I'm going to save and close. When I review the statements, I can see on my primary checking on page 96, we received interest from the CD 151-1931, from Star Ohio, and from the primary checking account. When I review my investment example 3 on page 99, I can see that my money market account received reinvested interest. So I know these items need posted. I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go to Accounting and Transactions and Receipts. I'm going to add, choose Interest, and the Add Receipt form opens. On an interest receipt, the source is always the account that earned the interest. So we start by choosing the money market account. My money market account is reinvested. So when the interest is posted to that account, it increases the balance. I can also see that this is a pooled investment. We'll start by entering the dates. On an interest receipt, the 3 dates, receipt, deposit, and post, will always be the date the interest hit the bank statement. In our case, the date is April 29th. I'm also going to tell the software to remember the dates until form closes because I need to post multiple interest receipts. I'm going to tell the software to distribute proportionally by pooled balances and enter the amount of the money market interest. 140.01 from the statement. The software distributes the pooled balance and I click Save. The rest of my interest appears on the primary checking account and I will enter those. Interest to the investment 151-1931 is also pooled. I'm going to mark to distribute the pooled balance. $14.30. Click Save. My Star Ohio. This Star Ohio example is receipting the interest to the primary checking. Your Star Ohio account may be reinvested. Make sure that you check that. Distribute proportionately. 265.06. Click Save. And finally, my primary checking interest. I'm going to distribute proportionally by pooled fund balance. 102.45. I want to point out that on the primary checking, reinvest is automatically marked and it's grayed out. I can't make a change. Don't be confused about this. In the primary checking, reinvest and receipt to primary is exactly the same meaning. So the software automatically defaults reinvest. The primary checking is keeping its interest. The software is distributing the interest by pooled fund balances, and I click Save and Close. These are the only interest receipts that are on all of my bank statements. So I can mark them and click Post Print, posting the 4 selected items, and that will print 4 receipts. Sending those to the printer, and I receive the message, did all items print successfully? If they've all come out of the printer okay, I click Yes. Let's take a look at the bank statement on page 96. My primary checking at the top, you can see in the upper area I have a fees, $57.75. So sometimes your bank charges you a fee. In our example, the bank has charged us a fee for deposit tickets. I ordered deposit tickets in April. At the time I ordered them, they gave me a ballpark figure. I checked my blanket certificate and I had plenty of available unspent balance, but the bank said they wouldn't know exactly the charge until I received the deposit tickets. I see on my bank statement the charge amount is $57.75. When the bank has charged you a fee and you see that on your bank statement, you have to post an electronic payment so that you can clear that charge. It must be posted inside the bank statement date. So let's go ahead and take care of that item as well. I'm going to click on the Payments tab. In your case, if you don't have a blanket certificate in place, you would have to post a then and now purchase order back to the date you ordered those deposit tickets and then post the electronic payment. I'm going to click the Add button and choose Electronic because the payment automatically came out of my bank account, and I'm going to post a paper voucher for this item. My vendor is the First Buckeye Bank. For the post date, I have to turn to my bank statement and see when the charges hit the bank statement. And that was on April 27th. So that is my post date, April 27th. This item needs to be cleared on the April bank statement. My detail is 1 order, deposit tickets, 57.75. I'm choosing my blanket certificate. You may have a purchase order for this item, and it's the full $57.75. I save and close. It must be posted so it appears on my bank reconciliation. I'm sending that off to my printer, and once that comes out of the printer, I'm going to answer the question, did this print successfully? Yes, it did. Now I can go to my bank reconciliation and start clearing items. Everything has been posted. In your case, you would want to check and make sure there weren't any direct deposits that you've missed. Be sure to backdate the items in the month where they hit your bank statement. I'm going to mark the April 30th bank reconciliation and click Edit and Post. The software is going to give me a system message that transactions have been posted since the bank reconciliation was saved. There is nothing wrong with that. That's what I expected to see. And I'll click OK. And I'm going to open this to full screen so we can see better. Nothing's changed on my Statements tab. These are the exact statement balances I entered. I'm going to go to the Primary Receipts tab and clear the receipts from my primary checking statement. This is the Primary Receipts tab. From page 96 in the Deposit Credit Activity area, I clear the State of Ohio deposit of 4610.22. My deposit of $353,896.40 is deposit ticket number 12. Remember, we can clear the deposit ticket total if you're using deposit ticket numbers. If not, you would have to clear the individual items that added up to the deposit ticket. I'm going to click on my deposit 13,018 is deposit ticket 13. I have a deposit of 2,300 and 800, and my 3 interest receipts, 1430, 265.06, and the interest for the checking 102.45. Those are all my cleared receipts. In the bottom area, it shows me the cleared receipts total. This matches my bank statement's total credits that have been cleared exactly. Keep in mind, if you've done any investment transfers to the primary from an investment, it would appear on this tab as well, and you would need to take that amount into consideration. I'm going to save my progress. If I change tabs, it's not going to lose the progress. I can move around through the bank reconciliation without saving. I just like to save my progress as I go. It always flips me back to the Bank Statements tab when I click Save, and I'm going to click on the Primary Payments tab. The software is automatically going to organize these in the order of electronic payments, then all warrants, and then if you have EFT wages, they'll be listed at the bottom. So I'm going to start with warrants, and those are on the bottom of page 96, starting with check number 3560 and 3572. And I want to show you a trick. I'm going to scroll down a bit. Check number 3573 did not clear the bank, but 3574 has cleared. And not only that, all the way from 74 through 3590 has cleared. So if I check mark the top, 3574, and the bottom, 3590, I can hold Control and U for up. and the software will select everything between those two check marks, leaving 73 outstanding. I can also clear individually 3592, leaving 3591 outstanding. That's just a quick way to clear items that are all sequentially cleared. On page 97, you can see the electronic items that have cleared the bank. My 2 EFT batches are included in those numbers. If you post EFT batches in the payroll software in UAN, you will be able to clear those batch items as well. 640372 is the first, and 646971 on 422 is the second. I'm going to clear both of those, and then go back up to the top of the form and clear the individual electronic payments that I posted. 192.95, 634.27, 100, 2766.50. These may not be in the exact order. 125.39, 101.85, 3717.17, 3295.44, 521, 135.06, and the last is that bank charge $57.75. If I hadn't posted that, that would not be available to clear. Once I've cleared all of the payments, I can look at the bottom and see the total cleared payments and compare that to my bank statement. Have I cleared the correct items? On the bank statement, if I look at the total debits plus the fees, I'm going to get $65,267.07, and I can see my cleared payments match exactly. Now, if you have transferred from primary to investment, those items would be included at the top in this amount, and you would have to take those into consideration when looking at the cleared payments total. I'm always going to check my primary adjustments tab and make sure that I haven't done any receipt adjustments, payment adjustments, or fund balance adjustments that will need to be cleared. Nothing there this month. Secondaries and investment is where I'm going to find my reinvested interest. So I will never find reinvested interest on the primary receipts tab. They did not post to the primary account. Those must be cleared from the secondaries and investments tab. Notice that when I cleared that item, I'm going to uncheck it again, the red X turned into a green check mark. So I am truly reconciled. My overall cash has reconciled to my overall bank statements. But I am not going to post. I could, but remember, we want you to run through some reviews before posting that bank reconciliation. We're going to go ahead and click Save. And it's going to tell me the bank reconciliation's been saved but not posted. And there is nothing wrong with that. I'm going to click OK. It always takes me back to the bank statements tab when I save, and I click Close. Now my progress has been saved, but I want to run through some checks before posting. That review begins on page 100. What reports should I use to verify transactions? And we're going to look at that before coming back to post the bank reconciliation. Now you can run these checks after all postings, when you print payments, when you print receipts, but it's really important at the end of the month to run through some items to make sure they're accurate before I post that bank reconciliation. Once I post the bank reconciliation, it is going to lock down the date. I will not be able to go back and correct within the month of April any items posted incorrectly. And I don't mean the wrong amount, I mean to the wrong account codes. So that needs to be accurate as well. So when I have saved my progress, I always run through the checks. You see in the book on page 101, review the following items on the investment activity: accounting reports and statements, investment reports. And it's going to default to the month of April. That was the last month an item was posted. If it didn't appear in the month that I wanted, I can change that. But I want the investment activity. So these are the only investments that changed, and I want to make sure that they are accurate. So on the investment activity, I can make sure that the interest receipts were posted accurately. Notice that on the investment activity, I can see that this CD, 151.1931, earned interest, but it didn't reinvest. And that's what I wanted it to do. So if the amount of the investment is not going to increase, you would post to primary. And I can tell that I did that accurately, and this matches the statement balance. My money market account is reinvested. So I see it in the interest column, and I also see it in the reinvested column. It is increasing my investment balance. This ending balance on the right needs to match my statement. If it does, that means I have the money in the right bank account. If it doesn't, and this receipt looks okay, it was reinvested as it should have been, it means my beginning statement balance didn't match. So in a prior month, I posted this interest receipt to primary, and I can fix that by an investment transfer, not by voiding a receipt. So you can tell if you've posted them correctly and if the investment balance is accurate. The statement balance you enter on the bank reconciliation is the statement balance. You reconciled your cash to the total statement balance, but that is not reconciling whether you have it in the correct account. This report and review is going to help. So this ending balance should match my statement, and it does. I don't have a problem. And then moving down, my Star Ohio, again, it does not change its balance. It's posted to the primary. Yours might be reinvested. If it is, you always check and make sure that matches the statement balance. So the first review is, did I get my investments posted correctly when I posted receipts? The investment activity will help you with that. Moving down on page 100, the revenue ledger. I'm going to close the investment reports and choose revenue reports. From the revenue reports drop-down list, I want the revenue ledger. And it's going to default to April because I don't have anything posted in May yet. You may have to drive this back to the month you want. I'm going to select all of the accounts where revenue was posted, and I'm going to check and see if I posted everything accurately by running my eye over this. You may not want to print it. It is a large report, but what I'm looking for is accurate posting. So to the 1101 account, general property tax, I posted property tax. Local government went to local government. Interest, of course, went to the interest accounts, and I'm going to run through each of these as I look through. The gasoline tax received the gasoline tax. General property tax. You're just going to run through this and make sure that you didn't post a receipt to the wrong account. Cemetery fees, and it says the sale of lots and open and closed fees. Notice that says that down here as well. So the description that I type in my purpose box could indicate that I had multiple account codes. So I can tell receipt number 48 was posted to both of these account codes. And I could check my receipt to make sure if I separated that correctly. 700 of that receipt was fees, 1,600 was sale of lots. Did I post it accurately? Yes. These are open and closed fees. There's no question those are in the right place. This is just for the cemetery lot sale. It's in the right place. So you're checking through your ledgers, did I post things to the correct account codes? If you find a mistake, you're going to correct it. That would be a receipt reallocation. Make sure you date the reallocation exactly the same day as the original receipt so that it corrects your financial reports for the month that you're fixing. Once you post that bank reconciliation, you don't have that opportunity. It locks down that prior month. So you want to run through these checks quickly. It doesn't mean you can't fix it. You would just simply be fixing it in the current month rather than the month when it was originally posted. Sometimes you don't catch a mistake and it is posted later. That's not a problem. But if you can fix them in the same month they happened, that's the best thing. Moving down the list, we're going to look at the items in our purchase orders. I want to see my purchase order status, so I'm going to go to purchase order reports. And from there, you're going to evaluate your purchase orders and determine which ones need to be closed, which ones need to be left open, which ones may need to be adjusted, and perhaps which ones will need to be opened moving forward. If you find that one of your purchase orders for fixed costs is running low and those fixed costs are going to continue, you would do a second purchase order for the balance. You don't need to close the original purchase order if it's for the same fixed cost moving forward. So your evaluation of purchase orders is very important. When that evaluation reveals you want to close purchase orders, you're going to go to Accounting, Utilities, and Purchase Order Utility. And you can use the type and status to your advantage. I want the status to show me all the zero balance ones. Zero balance purchase orders, they don't have any money to spend off of. I don't want these popping up in my list, and I don't want to leave them open, so I have to deal with them at year end. So I'm going to close all of my zero balance purchase orders first and get those out of the way. I use the Close Item button. The Close button is simply going to close the form without doing a thing. So I'm going to close the item, say OK. And some of these are prior year blanket certificates that carried over. It's not going to give us any more unencumbered balance. These are zero balance, so I don't even have to consider the warning message on this one. My close date is going to be April 30th, the last day of the month, and I click OK. Those are closed. Now I want to look at the expired items. That's going to be my first quarter BCs. And now that you've paid bills in April off of the charges made against that before they expired March 31st, you should know whether you have to keep these open for more bills coming in. And I'm going to tell you that we've got one BC, number 12, that still is awaiting a $25 bill for an item charged against it. So I'm going to close the ones that do not need adjusted. These are not going to be spent from any longer. And remember, I can use Control Up to select a range and also Control Down as well. But I'm leaving purchase order 12 open because it has a bill that needs to be paid against it. I'm going to click the Close Item and choose the date, the last day of the month, and OK. Blanket certificate number 12 for office supplies had something purchased against it. Somebody purchased $25 of office supplies before the expiration date. Now, it could have been on the 31st of March. That's okay. It wasn't expired. But the bill hasn't come in yet. It's going to be here by the time we pay the May bills, I'm sure. But I still need to leave this open, but I don't need to leave it open for $150. I can adjust it down. Always type a good reason in the purpose box. I am going to reduce it by $125 because I only need $25 remaining. I'm going to again date this the last day of the month. If you're doing this before the last day of the month, you can always date it your today date. And I'm going to leave remaining $25 so when that bill finally comes in, I can pay it off the blanket certificate it was charged against. When I post this item, it gives me a chance to print the adjustment report. I would always print that and put it with my original BC. All right, so this BC that is expired will remain open to pay that $25 charge that was made against it. Now I'm going to evaluate my open purchase orders of all types. I want to look at it many ways. I would look at it by the vendors and see if I still have enough remaining balance, or let's take a look at this one, auditing services. So this is an item that carried over from the prior year, and it's for audit services. I can display this to see what's been paid. It was originally for $8,000, and it was for audit. And the auditors have completed that audit. The final bills have been paid, and I can see we have a current balance of $58. I'm not going to need the $58. So evaluate. The original purchase order was $8,000. It's carried over in this amount, and it is spent to this amount. I don't need the current balance. I can close this purchase order. A prior year purchase order, when you close the item, you do not receive the unencumbered balance. That $58 is not going to become an unencumbered balance for me to spend this year. It is simply carried over encumbrance that is now adjusted to zero. So I'm going to close that one as well as of the last day of April and continue to evaluate. But you want to make sure that you have these tidied up and ready because you're closing down the month to make changes. Once we evaluate our purchase orders, we're going to look at accounting reports and appropriation reports. We've just closed purchase orders, and we need to look at the appropriation ledger and start looking at items. Now, this is a long list. What you would be looking for here is, did I post payments to the right account codes? And how is my unencumbered balance holding up? Are we running out of a budget, especially on your salary and employer share Medicare and OPERS and OP&F? You need to stay on top of this. Shouldn't surprise you when you are running low on appropriations. If you're looking at these ledgers, you can see I've got $30,000 still available to continue paying the trustees' salaries out of the general fund. I don't have a problem. And I'm going to move down to my next one, Township Fiscal Officer. Still fine, not a problem. We continue looking at OPERS, evaluating our unencumbered balance. That looks good. And as you move forward in the year, you're going to find some of these unencumbered balances running low. Now take a look. The medical and hospitalization account code, the unencumbered balance is zero, but I have encumbered the entire amount on the purchase order. So this is not telling me it's a problem. I would look at the purchase order report to see where we are. Because I set that money aside, it's a fixed cost. So this is not a problem unless my purchase order starts running low in this account code. I would need to either appropriate additional money to this account or reallocate to this account so that I could do another purchase order for this account. So you're going to evaluate, checking to see if you've paid the right things from the right accounts. Have you opened the purchase orders to the right accounts? And if you didn't, you would close that purchase order and open it up on the correct accounts. If you're checking your ledgers each month, you're going to find those posting errors, and you can fix them in the same month they happen. Or you find a mistake that was done in the prior month, you can fix it now before you lock down that amount. So once you've made your evaluation of the appropriation ledger, if you found mistakes, you would fix them. It is now time for us to post that bank reconciliation. So I'm going back to the form. I click Edit and Post. If anything was changed, I might get the message that something was changed. If I had to move money between the investments to get those balances corrected between the primary checking, it's simply moving money from investment to primary or vice versa. It doesn't change the reconciliation, but you would see new items on the payments and receipts or secondaries tabs. So I still have my green check mark. I'm ready to post print, and now I post that bank reconciliation. We click OK. It prints the report. I take that report to the meeting for the board to sign. It printed correctly. Moving to page 108, preparing financial information for a meeting. What should I print for my meeting? Well, we have several reports that are nice for that purpose. So we're going to close out of the bank reconciliation. I'm already in accounting and reports. My report groups to the left, I'm going to choose management reports. These are really nice. Management reports. On the management reports, we have the first three listed: the fund summary, the revenue summary, and the appropriation summary. Now, if you've already posted items in May, and I'm going to use this as an example, I'm preparing the financial reports for April. If I have already posted items in May, and it's possible you have, you're going to have to select the date you want, or you're going to be posting it for the wrong period. So always make sure your month is the month you're reporting, last month. And you'll select all your funds. And I'm going to click display for class purposes. You will print these at home or save them as PDF and email them to your board. I always print a copy for my records to show the auditor when they come what I gave to the governing board. So this is my fund summary. It's not like a fund status. It is always going to show the starting fund balance at the year, the month-to-date revenue, the year-to-date revenue, month-to-date expenditures, year-to-date expenditures. The fund summary is a nice snapshot of up through April with month-to-date and year-to-date reporting. Let's select the revenue summary. And make sure your date is selected. Select all your funds. You will print. I'm just going to display very quickly. It does not show revenues by account code. It shows by type. It's grouping them together by type, not account code. The budget unfavorable on this report simply means you have not received this money yet. In our training class, it's only May 2nd. This is not going to indicate a problem at May 2nd. So this is a snapshot of where you are in your revenues, month to date and year to date, against the budget account. And we're going to choose the appropriation summary. Make sure the date is correct, and we'll display that for class. You're going to print that for your meeting. And it's not going to show by account code either. It's going to group them by program. Here's our 110 administrative, and then by object groups. So all of the 100s are in salaries, all of the 200s for our township chart of accounts, they are grouping them together. All the accounts where you pay someone to do something for you, services that are contracted, are purchased. All those supplies and materials, whether operating or office, are going to go right there. And everything else is grouped into other. But it's a nice snapshot to see each fund and the groups. A lot of people also like to provide a payment listing, so we're going to close the management reports and go to payment listing. Payment reports, it depends on what you are providing for your board to approve, whether you need the payment listing or the payment register detail. Payment listing is not going to show account codes or purchase order details. It is simply going to show the payment. Let me show you one. So it's simply a check number, or if it was a voucher, the voucher number and the amount. No account code structure here. They should not be approving bills at this level. If they need to see the detail, then payment register detail, and I will show you that one, is going to show the account codes and the detail amount. If this is the only thing they're looking at to approve payments, they should have the payment number, the vendor, and the detail description, and the account codes that they're charged to. So make sure that you're providing sufficient information to meet the Ohio Administrative Code guidelines on what the board has to have to approve payments. If you are permitted to pay bills between meetings, such as your payroll withholdings online or checks that have to be posted in order to avoid late penalties from ongoing vendors, then you may have to skew the date so that you get the last check from your last approval list, and that would go back to March, probably picking your last meeting date. Our last meeting in March was the 3rd, so I'm going to look from the 4th all the way up to my meeting day. So we meet the first Thursday of each month. I would be creating a bill list for them. So the payment register, if it's for the bill list that they're approving, you should include all of the payments that will be paid. If you are just doing a monthly report for the monthly reports and not a bill approval list, then you can leave that as payment listing the month of April, and it's simply a list of all payments made in April to go with your April financial reports. A bill approval list should be the payment register detail, and make sure you're including all of the items that need to be approved at your meetings. The bank reconciliation summary, when we posted the bank reconciliation, it printed that report. That's going to go to the meeting to be approved. And if you're on UAN payroll, often the wage withholding detail or the wage withholding summary. The detail would show individual paychecks for each employee. That's a lot of information. It's tiny print, but it really does give a snapshot of payroll. Barry's bi-weekly, he had 2 paychecks in the month of April. So it's going to show both individual items. The wage withholding summary is going to group each employee's total by the month. Instead of showing individual paychecks, it'll just show total paid. A shorter report, it depends on what your board wants to see. This is the total amount for checks dated, has nothing to do with pay periods, checks dated in April. We also have a nice signature page in accounting, reports, and statements. Signature page. If you simply put the date of your meeting, our meeting is May 5th, and I'll display that for you. It just provides a list of these items. My board never signed individual areas, so they're not signing 6 times. We just drew an arrow to all of them, and each one signed once for the whole batch. And I always kept one batch of reports in printed form for my auditor so they could see what I gave the board. If there's any question, somebody needs a copy of what I gave them that month, I've got the exact document that was provided. That brings us to Chapter 7, Less Common Transactions. On page 113, we start with how to close an investment. The steps to access are accounting, maintenance, and investments. In our example, the Buckeye Monument CD matures on May 2nd. That's today. So at the last meeting, the trustees decided to roll the CD over. You'll need to let the bank know to roll over the CD, of course. So in fake training land, I have called the bank and made arrangements to do that. And then I'm going to post the following transactions on UAN. Before I can close the investment, I have to post the final interest. They're going to notify me of the final interest, and I'll probably have the paperwork for the new investment. We're going to go to Accounting and Transactions and Receipts to post our final interest. I'm going to click the Add button, choose Interest, and from my Source drop-down list, I'm going to choose my investment. The date the interest was earned is not the last day of the month. It is May 2nd. So I'm not going to be backdating this into April. It did not take place in April. When an investment closes or rolls over, you always use the exact date that the event took place. This is a non-pooled investment, so I'm simply going to type in the amount of the interest and click Save and Close. I'm going to mark the interest receipt and click Post Print. I'm going to confirm I want to post one selected item, and I'll be sending that off to my printer. I check the item, and if it printed successfully, I say yes. Now I can close the Receipts area and go back to my Investments tab. Because I left the Investments tab open, I can simply click on my Buckeye Monument CD. Remember the path to, if you didn't keep a tab open, you would simply go to Accounting, Maintenance, and Investments. If you leave the tab open, you simply click on the tab. My Buckeye Monument CD is going to roll over. I'm going to click Close Item. And I'm going to get the reminder message. You want to close the selected item? All final interest must be posted before closing. Well, I've already taken care of that. Remember that if you haven't, you would need to cancel and take care of that. Our close date is May 2nd. Notice that I'm verifying my closing price. The year-to-date interest is $23.37. I have two choices. When you close an investment like a CD, you are either actually closing the investment and the money's going to go back to your primary checking, or you're going to roll it over into the new investment. Because I'm rolling over, I'm going to choose the rollover balance into new investment and click Close Item. The software is going to show me the message, this investment will be closed after the rollover information is saved successfully on the next form. In our example, I'm always going to use the account number at the bank for my investments. That way I don't ever mix them up and post interest to the wrong item. My new investment number is, and because it's rolled over, I'm going to change the number to 451482. And notice it's already marked as a certificate of deposit. My interest rate may have changed. And my maturity date is going to be different. I'm going to choose 2017, May 2nd. So your maturity date needs to be entered. It belongs only as a non-pooled investment to the Buckeye Monument Trust Fund. This is our non-spendable balance. And I'm going to make sure the interest is receipting to the primary checking. For the interest to be spendable, it has to be available in the checking account. So we always set up our non-spendable amount as an investment with the interest posting to the primary checking. So we click Save And we want to print the rollover report. I'll click OK. I would mark the details on my closed investment, that it closed and what we did, it rolled over into the new investment. Make sure that I leave a nice clear audit trail. Notice that the initial CD that I started with is now missing from the list. So I want you to look up here at the status. The status is showing me only the open investments. If I look at all, it will show me the open and the closed. So when you close an item, it disappears from the list because the list is defaulting to show you only open. Our next section on page 115 is how to increase or decrease an investment. Investments like certificate of deposits don't normally have this kind of transaction, but you may be moving money between your Star Ohio or your money market account to the primary checking. To move money between an investment and the primary checking, we leave investments and go to Accounting, Transactions, Investment Transfer. I have to make the transfer at the bank first, and then I'm going to post in UAN the same transfer between the investment and the primary checking. The form automatically defaults to primary to investment, and I need to change it to investment to primary. From the drop-down list, I choose my money market account, and I type in the amount. The date is the date that I made the transfer at the bank, and that was today, our May 2nd training date. I'm going to click Post, and in the software it shows me at the bottom left that it posted the transfer from money market to primary. When I close, it gives me the opportunity to print the investment transfer report. I always print this for my investment file. Moving money from the primary checking to an investment is just as easy. You simply choose the investment transfer and remain on the default primary to investment. Remember, what you do at the bank has to be posted in UAN as well. At the top of page 117, we cover how do I replace a lost or damaged check. So sometimes a check gets lost in the mail or damaged by the vendor who receives it, or it has arrived damaged. We're going to go to Accounting, Utilities, and Payment Utility. We find the check, and mark it on the list. Number 3573. Our attorney's office called and said they have never received the payment from their invoice at the end of March. I can clearly see I sent them a check on April 7th, and it has not arrived. So the first thing you want to do is check your desk. Have you mailed that check? If you know you mailed it and it has still not arrived, you need to discuss with the vendor what happens when the check, the original check, 3573, arrives in the mail. They are not going to cash it. They're going to send that back to you. So make sure that there is an understanding that if it does arrive late in the mail, they're not going to cash it as well. But if you want their payment to be reissued, the software will do that for you. You don't have to go create a brand new payment. The reissue button is how you take the detail and the distribution from the purchase order from the original payment in April and move it to a brand new check number that you are issuing today. Reissue does the voiding and the reissuing in one step. So we'll say, okay, that is what we want to do. My next good check number is 3593, and I have that ready. My reissue date is the today date. I know that I originally paid that payment in April, but I am reissuing it today. I click OK and send that off to my printer. In the bottom left corner, the software shows me that it voided and reissued one item. On the list, if I scroll back down, the original payment is voided in the software and has been reissued to a brand new check number, 3593, that's outstanding. So the software will reissue, preserving your purchase order and details from the original payment, placing that on a brand new check. Our next section on page 117, how do I refund a deposit? In our example on page 120, the park manager called and told us that we need to refund the shelter house rental receipt number 45 2016 because the party was canceled. The check should be written to the Sunset Riding School. Our steps to access are accounting, utilities, and receipt utility. I scroll down and choose receipt number 45 and click adjust. Notice that the source is Sally Bay, the Park and Recreation Director. She collects all of the money for the park rental, so our receipt isn't to the Sunset Riding School, but if I check park receipt number 50016, I can clearly see the Sunset Riding School paid the money, and I'm going to refund that. I don't need to use the data entry line at the bottom to introduce anything new. I must adjust the amount that's already listed in the box. Notice that's why you see the red letters here telling you that the adjustments to existing lines must be entered directly on the existing line. So I'm going to enter in negative $150. And my revised amount is 0. I'm not finished. When I need to refund creating a warrant, I need to check the box here. When I check this box, the refund warrant tab is available. Notice that it automatically defaults to Sally Bay, the Park and Recreation Manager, because she was the original source of my fiscal officer receipt in the UAN software. I'm going to type over that. I'm going to enter the Sunset Riding School and their address to appear on the check. Once I'm finished filling in the details for the refund warrant, on the Adjustments tab, I choose a date for the warrant. If it's going to be approved at the meeting, I would have to date it in advance. If I'm going to get that check signed today, if I have a method to do that, I can date it today. When I click Post, the software is going to ask me to confirm the next good check number, and I confirm that's my next good check. I click OK, and it's going to send a reduction of receipt warrant to the printer. I click Print. And I always want to print the adjustment report to go with my original receipt. I always want to have multiple copies, so when the print form opens, I want a copy to go with the original receipt and a copy to go make a note for myself to clear this item on the Primary Adjustments tab on the bank reconciliation. On page 122, we began, what should I do when I receive a new type of revenue? Well, it often happens. We're going to close out of the receipt utility and we'll go to accounting, maintenance, and revenue accounts. So if you've received new revenue that you have never received before, or you find the previous fiscal officer is not posting revenue to the correct account, you need to add the new account. The first thing you want to do is check your active list. Does the account exist already? If not, change the status and look at your inactive list. Has the account been activated before and has now been deactivated? If it's on your inactive list, you can see I have nothing here. But if it's on your inactive list, you would mark it and click Activate It. And when you change the status back to active, you will see the account code on this list. If it's not on your inactive account or active account list, then you need to add the new account. In our scenario, the fire department has applied for and received a grant from the Bright Light Company to purchase some new flashlights. We're going to click Add and choose the Fire and EMS levy. I'm going to scroll down and find the right account code. Remember, if you don't know the correct account code, always call local government services and they will direct you. These account codes Place items on your annual financial report in the correct position. Very important to choose the correct accounts. Other local grants, not from another government, is my choice. And I'm going to click Save. The software shows me in the bottom left corner it saved one item, and I can click Close. If I scroll down on my active list, I can see it here. And now I'll be able to post a receipt. I'm going to go forward with this grant so that you can see the entire process. We're at the bottom of page 123, and I'm going to post the receipt of the grant money. Accounting, transactions, and receipts. I click the Add button and choose Standard. The Bright Light Company is not one of our receipt vendors, so they're not going to appear on this drop-down list. I simply type in the name and my purpose. My receipt, deposit, and post date are all going to be today. I received the money today, I am depositing it today, and it is going to post to my bank statement today. I choose the new revenue account from the drop-down list at the bottom. And enter the amount of the grant. Save and close, mark it, and post it. And if I want multiple copies, because I want to keep a copy in the grant file, I can simply change the number of copies right here. When it comes out of the printer, I sign the original, put it with my receipts, and put the copy in the file. We say, yes, the item's printed successfully. That does not make the money available for the governing board to appropriate or for the fire chief to start spending something we had not already budgeted. So we're going to request an amended certificate from our county auditor. I'm not going to show you typing a letter to the county auditor. That's part of that process. How do you notify your county auditor you receive new money? You'll get an amended certificate back, and in UAN, you are going to put in the supplemental revenue budget, accounting, maintenance, and revenue budgets. I'm going to click on the fire and EMS levy and choose supplemental. I'm going to enter the amount of our grant, typing a purpose in the box for myself, the effective date of my amended certificate, if your county auditor turns that right back around to you today. I don't have a resolution approving the amended certificate. If you do, then you would place that there. This is not appropriations. This is the certificate of resources available. When I click Save in the bottom left corner, the software shows me it saved the supplemental revenue budget for Fund 2191, and I can close the form. Now my governing board at the next meeting can appropriate that money. Now that my governing board has met on May 5th, notice in Training Land the date has advanced to May 6th. Last night at our meeting, the board adopted appropriations for the $1,000 to the Fire and EMS Levy Fund. And I'm going to enter that supplemental appropriation in my software, accounting, maintenance, and appropriation budgets. I mark the Fire and EMS Levy and click Supplemental. And scroll down to the account code, operating supplies. Our flashlights don't qualify as a capital outlay, so we are just adding to our operating supplies. The effective date is last night's meeting, and our resolution number is 2016-47. I click Save, and the software shows me it saved the supplemental appropriation for Fund 2191, and close. I let the fire chief know that that is ready, and he can give me the vendor. If I need a W-9 from that vendor, I make sure I get that first. But we're going to get the vendor, the purchase order in place, and then he will order those flashlights. That's the end of Accounting Introductory. Thank you for your attention.